Chapter 961, Tricolor Pill. Although she still had no idea why the 9th level Monarch stage fire profundity fragment turned into liquid and entered her body or why it resonated with the fire spirit body's energy, it was no longer important to her. Brother Duan, Feng Tianwu did not know when, but a purple silhouette appeared in her mind. It was a young man who was always dressed in purple. He had straight brows, bright eyes, and he was handsome. Even if the prediction isn't real, I, Feng Tianwu, don't regret knowing you in my life. Feng Tianwu's pretty face was flushed as she mumbled to herself. It was so red that it looked like blood was dripping out. The shyness on her face could make men fall head over heels for her. Naturally, Duan Lingtian did not see Feng Tianwu's current shy expression. He was traveling from cave to cave at the moment, attempting to figure out the direction of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure to get to the palace in the center zone. It was the true highlight of the hunt for the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Value-wise, the Emperor stage profundity fragment in the Martial Emperor powerhouse's body surpassed all of the treasures including the 7 Monarch stage profundity fragments. No matter what, I must obtain the Emperor stage profundity fragment. Naturally, Duan Lingtian, who had the rebirth Martial Emperor's memories, could not be any more clear on how precious the Emperor stage profundity fragment was. There's only one Emperor stage profundity fragment in the great treasure that the rebirth Martial Emperor left behind. Furthermore, it wasn't his. He had used his Emperor stage profundity fragment much earlier when he was performing rebirth. From the rebirth Martial Emperor's memories, Duan Lingtian found out that one of the conditions for rebirth from the 3 lives rebirth technique that the rebirth Martial Emperor cultivated that time was to burn his Emperor stage profundity fragment. Therefore, the rebirth Martial Emperors did not leave an Emperor stage profundity fragment behind. The rebirth Martial Emperor's Emperor stage profundity fragment that he left behind is a first-level Emperor stage profundity fragment, so I can't use it anyway. Duan Lingtian jolted and thought to himself, perhaps the Emperor stage profundity fragment that's left behind in the Martial Emperor's body in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure is one that I can use. Duan Lingtian was even more desperate when he thought of this. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian proceeded with the hunt. He sped up, and it was so fast that it felt like he was rushing to reincarnate. Time was flashing by quietly. Duan Lingtian did not stop searching. Along the way, 5 Element Sect's disciples' bodies appeared before his eyes one after another. He did not look too good when he saw that. Among the 5 Element Sect's disciples, there was one Wood Peak's disciple that he was familiar with. Before entering the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, the Wood Peak's disciples treated him respectfully, and they would address him as Senior Brother Lingtian all the time. He had to admit that his pride secretly soared every time he heard the group of Wood Peak's disciples calling him Senior Brother Lingtian. After all, those Wood Peak's disciples were all older than him. However, they were now dead bodies. Tian Wu, Su Li, Brother Zhang, Daniu, Chen Wei, are you guys doing all right? Duan Lingtian was inwardly troubled as a couple of silhouettes flashed in his mind. At this moment, he thought it was most fortunate that there was nobody he knew in the pile of dead bodies he saw along the way. He could not help but feel fortunate. Time passed by silently. Soon, a month had gone by. Duan Lingtian continued his journey of traveling from cave to cave in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. He bumped into some reckless young powerhouses who would attack him along the way. Without an exception, all of the attackers died in his hands. Until this point, the most powerful young powerhouse that Duan Lingtian bumped into was Pengbao from Anicha sect. Naturally, Duan Lingtian knew that there would definitely be someone in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure whose ability could compare with Pengbao or was even more powerful than Pengbao. Pengbao came from the second-rate force, Anicha sect, while there were another 2 people who came from the second-rate forces among the young powerhouses who entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure this time. Throughout the journey, almost everyone who initiated a fight with Duan Lingtian would be killed by him directly. It's a pity that I didn't encounter another 4 Monarch stage profundity fragments. Duan Lingtian could not help but feel a little glum when he thought about this, but he very quickly let go of that emotion. He could not help but laugh at himself as soon as he let go of his glumness. I'm too greedy, I've already gotten a Monarch stage profundity fragment, and now I'm longing for another 4. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian moved again, and soon after he entered another cave. With just a glance, he saw 2 bodies lying on the ground. The bodies were rotten, and they were emitting a disgusting stench. Duan Lingtian did not cover his nose nor did he wear an irritated expression. In his past life on Earth, he had encountered many situations like this as a weapons specialist. He had experienced scenes that were even more disgusting than this, so he was immune to this since the beginning. Initially, he did not think anything would surprise him, as the cave was just another place that Duan Lingtian passed by randomly, and he had encountered similar scenes along the way. However, he seemed to notice something strange. He stopped all of a sudden when he was about to leave to another cave from the exit. At that very moment, Duan Lingtian's eyes were completely focused on a plant that was situated far in the cave. It was an extremely unique plant. It was not the ordinary green like most plants, but it had 3 different colors. Its root that was showing was gold, the branches were purple, and the leaves were red. Subconsciously, he knew this plant was extraordinary after he saw how unique it was. He browsed through the rebirth martial emperor's life memories in an attempt to search for an answer. Soon, he found the answer. The tricolor plant. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's pupils shrunk, and one could tell from his face that he was dumbstruck. His eyes lit up as though he had seen some precious treasure. However, Duan Lingtian's expression soon froze when he saw 3 tiny openings on the plant. Seems like the tricolor plant had tricolor fruits. The tricolor fruits are not ordinary spirit fruits. It's the general name for 3 spirit fruits. Each of them has a different color, and their medicinal efficacies are not reduced. Their medicinal efficacies are gentle that even a void interpretation martial artist can consume them. Consuming any one of it will help a martial artist below 4th level void transformation to break through a level. If a 1st level void transformation martial artist consumes all 3 spirit fruits, he'll be able to ascend 3 levels in a short period of time and get to the 4th level void transformation immediately. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and frowned. Who was it? That person has such a great luck. Judging from the opening marks on the tricolor plant, the spirit fruits have been plucked at least a month ago. Soon, Duan Lingtian began to mumble to himself as he observed the tricolor plant closely. If I was the one who found these 3 spirit fruits, I would definitely find a secluded place to cultivate after eating the spirit fruits. After all, the more powerful a person's ability is, the longer he'll live in the martial emperor's secret treasure to obtain more precious treasures. When he thought to this point, Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed. Perhaps I should search nearby for the person who obtained the 3 spirit fruits. I'm sure he's in somewhere secluded cultivating after eating the spirit fruits. It's impossible for him to consume all 3 spirit fruits in such a short period of time. Initially, Duan Lingtian thought that the 3 spirit fruits were obtained by 3 people, and were now part of the origin energies in those 3 individuals' bodies. However, he found out that the 2 bodies were killed with the same weapon and method after proper observation. It was obvious that it was the same person who killed the 2 people. It should only be one person. I must take a bet even if it's more than a person. If I'm right, I'll get at least 1 spirit fruit. If I'm wrong, it's just a little time wasted. Duan Lingtian very quickly made up his mind. Although Duan Lingtian had made up his mind, he was not in a rush to leave. He stared at the tricolor plant as he grinned. It seems like the person who took the tricolor fruits doesn't know the good stuff. Although the tricolor plant itself isn't as precious as the 3 spirit fruits, with refinement from some medicinal herbs, it can be refined into tricolor pills that can help elevate the cultivation base a little. There was nothing that looked extraordinary on the tricolor plant. Even with spiritual force, there was nothing special about it that could be found. However, the rebirth martial emperor's memories told Duan Lingtian that the tricolor plant had accumulated much heaven and earth spirit energy throughout the years as the bearer of the tricolor fruits. The heaven and earth spirit energy had integrated perfectly with the tricolor plant as though they were one. Only with a unique medicinal refinement method, one could transfer the heaven and earth spirit energy that was accumulated in the tricolor plant. The extracted heaven and earth spirit energy would then be used together with the tricolor plant to refine the tricolor pill. The tricolor pill isn't difficult to refine, as long as one knows the method. Even a grade 3 alchemist can refine it, let alone a grade 1 alchemist like me. Duan Lingtian had a smile on his face. He had already made up his mind to refine the tricolor pill. Coincidentally, he had the other medicinal herbs that were needed to refine the tricolor pill. Tricolor pill's medicinal efficacy alone isn't enough to help me break through. However, it won't be difficult for the tricolor pill's medicinal efficacy to drive the powerful medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill to help me break through to the 2nd level void transformation. That was what Duan Lingtian had in mind at the moment. Although the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy's rate of release had sped up a lot more ever since he entered the void transformation, it was still limited compared to an extraordinary void transformation martial artist. The spirit fruit's medicinal efficacy was needed to trigger the rebirth pill so it could fully display its overbearing medicinal efficacy. Naturally, the tricolor pill that was similar to the spirit fruit pill would also work as well. 961. Duan Ling Tian had the medical catalyst, the tricolor plant, that was required to refine the tricolor pill before his eyes. Moreover, he had the medicinal herbs that were needed to refine the tricolor pill. Therefore, he made up his mind to refine the tricolor pill immediately. In terms of grades, the tricolor pill was a grade 3 medicinal pill that only an alchemist above grade 3 could successfully refine. It would not work if it was not an alchemist who was above grade 3 even if he knew the refining method. Meanwhile, Duan Ling Tian, who had fused with the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories, had inherited the Rebirth Martial Emperor's refining methods and experience. He was a qualified alchemist who was above grade 3. Now that his cultivation base had broken through to the first level void transformation, he could make a grade 1 pill fire with the help of the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories and experience in refining methods. That was why he was currently a grade 1 alchemist. A grade 1 alchemist's existence was rare even in the foreign lands. They were usually present in first-rate forces, and their number was extremely low. Even in a first-rate force, having a grade 1 alchemist was considered rare. Some first-rate forces did not even have any grade 1 alchemists among them. They would usually solicit a grade 1 alchemist outside whenever they needed grade 1 medicinal pills, and the price they had to pay was hefty. However, although that was the case, they would still go for it like a flock of geese. A grade 1 medicinal pill's value could not be compared to a grade 2 medicinal pill, let alone medicinal pills that were grade 3 or below that could not even compare to a grade 2 medicinal pill. Duan Ling Tian's achievement in martial Dao aside, the fact that he became a grade 1 alchemist before the age of 30 was enough to make one's jaw drop. However, with the pill fire that I have mastered, I'll need a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron to refine the medicinal pill. An ordinary cauldron won't be able to endure my pill fire at all. Duan Ling Tian lifted his arm, and a gust of purple flame began to burn on his arm. There was a golden color on the edges surrounding the purple flame. It was the violet gold pill fire. It was a grade 1 pill fire. Only a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron could contain a grade 1 pill fire. Low-grade spirit weapon cauldron would melt into a pool of liquid as soon as a grade 1 pill fire was put into it, let alone refining medicinal pills. With my current ability, it won't be difficult to refine a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron, it's just that I don't have the necessary materials to refine a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron on hand. Duan Ling Tian frowned when he thought about this. Ever since his cultivation base had broken through to void transformation, apart from being able to form a grade 1 pill fire with origin energy, he could also form a grade 1 weapon flame. Ever since he fused with the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories and inherited the Rebirth Martial Emperor's experience, and medicine refinement and weapon crafting methods, he could be considered as a qualified grade 1 alchemist and weapons craftsman since he managed to form a grade 1 pill fire and weapon flame. Due to the fact that he had inherited the Rebirth Martial Emperor's experience, and medicine refinement and weapon crafting methods, he had become so powerful that he could be considered as being the best among the group of grade 1 alchemists and weapons craftsmen in Cloud Continent. Based on his medicine refinement ability, he could refine a grade 1 medicinal pill with a purity above 90%. Could the other grade 1 alchemists achieve that? When it came to crafting weapons, he could easily refine a grade 1 spirit weapon that could provide a 90% boost. Could other weapons craftsmen achieve that? Since he possessed the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories, he was like a reincarnated Rebirth Martial Emperor whenever he refined medicinal pills and spirit weapons. He could easily refine the best of the best. I have quite a lot of spatial rings on hand. I haven't gotten a chance to open them up and look at what's inside. Perhaps I'll be able to find the materials that I need to refine a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron. Duan Ling Tian's heart jolted as an assortment of spatial rings came out of the spatial ring in his hand. One by one, he performed the blood ownership claim on the rings with the intention to look for the materials that he needed to refine the cauldron. These spatial rings were the rewards that he obtained earlier. He was too lazy to manage them, so he usually put them away in his spatial ring. After looking at more than 30 spatial rings, Duan Ling Tian stopped moving his hands. He managed to gather all of the crafting weapon materials that he needed to refine a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron. I should perform blood ownership claim on the remaining spatial rings and take everything out later when I have the time. Otherwise, I wouldn't know if there's anything in there that might possibly help me during a critical situation. Duan Longtian made up his mind after learning a lesson this time. Since Duan Lingtian had gathered all the materials, he began to refine a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron. He did not go out of his way to look for a secluded place. The fact that he inherited his crafting weapons ability from the rebirth martial emperor and that he was currently a grade 1 weapon craftsman, he could ignore all the external disturbance to a certain level. Even if there was an interference, the worst it could do was affect the quality of the cauldron he refined. Although a high quality was not a requirement because the grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron belonged to the assistive spirit weapons category instead of the defensive spirit weapons category, the higher the spirit weapon cauldron's quality, the higher the success rate of the medicinal pill. However, Duan Lingtian, who had fused with the rebirth martial emperor's memories and inherited his life's crafting weapon methods and experience, did not have to bother with the spirit weapon's quality at all. He could successfully refine medicinal pills no matter how poor the spirit weapon cauldron was. All of these did not only come from the rebirth martial emperor's crafting weapon methods and experience that he inherited. After all, he had also inherited the rebirth martial emperor's medicine refinement methods and experience in his other life. The rebirth martial emperor had 2 lives experience. In Cloud Continent, he achieved peak attainment in the Tao of weapons refinement and Tao of medicine refinement. Naturally, Duan Lingtian, who possessed his memories, was not inferior to him. Begin. Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed as he took out the old spirit weapon cauldron that he had earlier and began to refine the grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron with the assortment of crafting weapon materials. The materials floated in midair, it turned into liquid one after the other as Duan Lingtian worked on them. At the same time, Duan Lingtian's both hands were moving like lightning. The magical weapon crafting method came effortlessly to him. It was so fast that ordinary people would not be able to see his movements clearly at all. Soon after, the liquid merged together. As time passed by, the spirit weapon cauldron's form began to appear. After Duan Lingtian refined it, a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron appeared. From the beginning to the end, Duan Lingtian had only spent 3 hours. If the other grade 1 weapon craftsmen from Cloud Continent were to see this with their own eyes, they would be stunned for a long time by the weapon crafting speed. An ordinary grade 1 weapon craftsman would take at least 3 to 5 days to refine a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron like this. It would not be surprising if they took 10 days to perform the refinement in detail. However, Duan Lingtian managed to refine a grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron successfully within a short 3 hours. Since nobody disturbed him, the cauldron's quality was extremely high. Phew, Duan Lingtian grabbed the cauldron as he lifted his arm. After he looked at the cauldron and the few cave exits, he mumbled to himself, "Seems like there are not many left alive in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. It's been a whole 3 hours but nobody came here." There were many treasures in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. It drove the group of young powerhouses crazy when they came in. Casualties were naturally unavoidable when the group of young powerhouses fought each other for the treasures. Along his journey, Duan Lingtian had seen at least 50 dead bodies. They were here for the treasures. They must have amazing dreams in their minds when they first came in. However, dreams are beautiful, and reality is cruel. In the end, they lost their lives here. As he recalled the bodies lying everywhere along his journey, Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh. Soon, Duan Lingtian's eyes were focused on the grade 1 spirit weapon cauldron that was in his hand. He had a smile on his face. Duan Lingtian plucked the tricolor plant slowly as he thought to himself, "Now I can finally refine the tricolor pill." After cleaning the soil off, he rolled it into a ball and tossed it directly into the cauldron. At the same time, Duan Lingtian took out some medicinal herbs from his side. Those were just some rather ordinary medicinal herbs. Although the tricolor pill was a good grade 3 medicinal pill, the other medicinal herbs were nothing special due to its low grade, and it depended on the tricolor plant as the main medicine. After gathering all the medicinal herbs, a wave of violet gold flame formed and burned in Duan Lingtian's hands. It was the grade 1 pill fire. As a grade 1 alchemist, there was naturally no pressure at all for him to refine a grade 3 medicinal pill like the tricolor pill. Following the rebirth martial emperor's memory, Duan Lingtian's hands were gradually moving faster like lightning that was continuously intersecting. The current in the space seemed to follow the rhythm as well. A faint air explosion sounded and rippled in the air. A suppressed current swept toward him while gusts of strong wind blew at him. It caused the plants in the damp cave to shake. It would take 3 to 4 hours at least for another grade 1 alchemist to refine a grade 3 medicinal pill like the tricolor pill. However, grade 1 alchemist Duan Lingtian naturally could not be compared to other grade 1 alchemists. He recalled his pill fire after a mere 1 hour. Wham! As both of Duan Lingtian's hands landed on the cauldron, a medicinal pill shot out from the cauldron all of a sudden. The medicinal pill looked unique. It was unique because there was a combination of 3 colors on its surface. There were gold, purple, and red color. Those were the 3 colors from the tricolor plant. It was the tricolor pill. Without further ado, Duan Lingtian hurriedly tossed the tricolor pill into his mouth and sat cross-legged in the air immediately. He began to cultivate with his eyes closed. When Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was at the void interpretation, he cultivated the 7th form, the sword dragon form, from the 9 dragons war sovereign technique. Apart from helping him to comprehend the sword concept, the sword dragon form came with a set of heaven rank advanced sword skill, the 9 dragons radiant flash. It was a set of extremely overbearing sword skill. Now that Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had broken through to void transformation, naturally he was no longer cultivating the 7th form, the sword dragon form from the 9 dragons war sovereign technique. He had begun to cultivate the 8th form of the 9 dragons war sovereign technique. Translator's thoughts. When the author mentions above grade 3 he actually means grade 1 and grade 2. Grade 2 is above grade 3 and similarly grade 1 is above grade 2. Also, this was originally drip blood establish ownership, Di Shui Ren Zhu, which represents the act of dripping one's blood to claim ownership on it. We've renamed it to blood ownership claim. 962. The 8th form of the 9 dragons war sovereign technique, roving dragon form. Duan Lingtian circulated his origin energy according to roving dragon form's mental cultivation method and managed to complete a circuit just a moment later. At the same time, the medicinal efficacy of the tricolor pill flowed into his body from his throat and began to merge with his origin energy. Duan Lingtian's dantian still had the dormant but potent medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill. It suddenly surged as if it sensed something before it merged with the origin energy and tricolor pill's medicinal efficacy. Instantly, the origin energy in his body circulated even faster. It was as fast as a flashing lightning. In just a blink of an eye, several circuits had been completed the roving dragon form's mental cultivation method. Slowly, Duan Lingtian focused entirely on his cultivation. Nevertheless, his spiritual force was still alert in the outside world. He would immediately wake up and attack if anyone got too close. Everything was proceeding smoothly as he looked at the origin energy in his body circulating in accordance to the roving dragon form's mental cultivation method. Duan Lingtian finally had some time to think. The dragon soaring the 9 heavens, an advanced heaven rank movement technique and martial skill, is part of the 8th form of 9 dragons war sovereign technique, roving dragon form. The basic section was spirit serpent movement technique and whirlwind. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted as he muttered, however, reaching the initial stage of the dragon soaring the 9 heavens with whirlwind as the basic section is still a bit lacking. Dragon soaring the 9 heavens was the same as an ordinary martial skill. It can be divided into the rudiment stage, initial stage, mastery stage, and perfection stage. At the rudiment stage, dragon soaring the 9 heavens was even slower than the mastery stage whirlwind that Duan Lingtian had already mastered. Due to that, Duan Lingtian did not immediately cultivate dragon soaring the 9 heavens. With the memories of rebirth martial emperor, he recently intended to reach the initial stage of the dragon soaring the 9 heavens with whirlwind as the basic section in one sitting. At that time, it would be effortless to cross a dozen ancient horned dragons' strength with his greatly increased speed. Moreover, there was something unique about the 8th form of 9 dragons war sovereign technique, the roving dragon form. It stressed upon wind birthing fire. What it meant was to comprehend the fire concept through the wind concept. One could fuel fire concept with wind concept when one had comprehended fire concept, and it would amplify the power of the fire concept. Duan Lingtian was not foreign to the concept of fueling fire concept with wind concept. His previous mortal enemy, Zi Shang, was a master of a concept like this. He could increase the power of fire concept by half. It was similar to the earth concept drawing support from earth energy. Suddenly, a fragment appeared in each of Duan Lingtian's hands. A dark green fragment and a dark purple fragment. It was a 9th level advanced wind concept fragment, and a 9th level advanced thunder concept fragment that originated from the body of the sect leader of Crimson Moon Sect, one of the 3 major forces in the eastern district of Northern Desert. The sect leader of Crimson Moon sect was killed by the sect leader of Five Element sect, Guo Chong, and the peak master of Wood Peak, Qi Yu. Both fragments fell into Qi Yu's hands, and he had given them to Duan Lingtian. At that moment, Duan Lingtian, with two concept fragments in his hands, was comprehending both types of concepts simultaneously while cultivating the mental cultivation method of the eighth form of Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the roving dragon form. Shortly after, Duan Lingtian discovered a problem. When he was cultivating, he realized that the wind concept was improving unnaturally. The improvement was beyond his expectation, it was improving way faster than it ever had before. In the beginning, he thought he was enlightened. But soon, he realized it was not enlightenment. It was because he fully mastered the mental cultivation method of the eighth form of Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the roving dragon form. The origin energy in his body was circulating according to the mental cultivation method of the eighth form of Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the roving dragon form. Hence, it was easier for him to comprehend the wind concept. Now, he was certain that the eighth form of Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the roving dragon form, would help him in comprehending the wind concept apart from being able to fuel fire concept with wind concept. This isn't noted in the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories, although he created the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique with the experiences from his 2 lives, he never had the chance to actually cultivate it, Duan Lingtian murmured in his heart before he fully immersed himself in his cultivation. His cultivation rapidly increased. The wind concept and thunder concept slowly improved too. Boom! After some time, a sound reverberated from Duan Lingtian's body. The origin energy led by the potent medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill broke through the bottleneck toward the second-level void transformation concept. With his breakthrough, his cultivation reached the second-level void transformation concept. Simultaneously, the potent medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill returned to Duan Lingtian's dantian. As for the medicinal efficacy of tricolor pill, it had long been exhausted. It was impossible for Duan Lingting to break through the bottleneck with the medicinal efficacy of the tricolor pill alone. Duan Lingtian opened his eyes, and there was a flash in his eyes. I think they'll break through the wind concept and thunder concept soon, it's been quite a fruitful trip. As Duan Lingtian felt the change in his origin energy, he tried to detect the advancement of his wind concept and thunder concept. A satisfied smile appeared on his face instantly. With these 4 9th-level concept fragments, I don't have to go and search for concept fragments. 2 concept fragments suddenly appeared in Duan Lingtian's hands. It was a 9th-level Earth concept fragment, and a 9th-level Sword concept fragment. Duan Lingtian weighed the fragments in his hands as the smile on his face brightened. Senior Brother Wei, there's a 9th-level concept fragment. A short and harsh voice rang out and clearly entered Duan Lingtian's ears. He immediately took note of the situation and kept all 4 concept fragments. Meanwhile, a cold voice with a hint of greed sounded, I saw it, 4 9th-level concept fragments. Duan Lingtian hurriedly stood up and immediately saw 2 young men in the cave. Their eyes were locked on him. Among the 2 young men, the leaner one stood in front. Behind him, to the right, stood a hideous young man. Boy, don't have to hide it, we saw you weighing the 4 9th-level concept fragments earlier. The hideous young man looked at Duan Lingtian and grinned. However, his grin was extremely ugly, it was uglier than crying. His voice was also ghastly. He was the owner of the first voice earlier. Duan Lingtian raised his eyebrow after listening to the hideous young man, but he ignored him. At the same time, he let out his spiritual force and tried to probe their cultivation. Haha, Senior Brother Wei, look at him. He's scared silly. When he saw there was no movement from Duan Lingtian, the hideous young man laughed crazily. Senior Brother Wei, I'll take care of this boy, after killing him, I just want the 9th-level fire concept fragment, the rest is yours. The hideous young man sounded humble when he addressed the lean young man. The man who was addressed as Senior Brother Wei nodded. He did not look Duan Lingtian in the eyes since the beginning, as though he did not take Duan Lingtian seriously at all. Naturally, it also was because Duan Lingtian only looked about 25 years old. It was easy to underestimate a man who was so young. The hideous young man brightened when he heard the lean young man's response. A mace appeared as he raised his hands, his origin energy raged, and it was intertwined with a flame. Boy, it's your luck to be able to die in my hands. As the hideous young man looked at Duan Lingtian, he flew out as fast as a cannonball. A vast flame surrounded his whole body, and he smashed the mace toward Duan Lingtian. Boom! Boom, 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 comma. Wherever he passed, with a swing of the flame-wrapped mace, the airflow compressed and exploded, causing bursts of thunderous explosions. When air exploded, the waves of heat resulted in gusts of wind blowing in all directions. The temperature in the cave rose as a result. A moment later, the hideous young man appeared before Duan Lingtian. He raised the flame-wrapped mace and smashed it toward Duan Lingtian. It looked like a shooting star. At the same time, more than 500 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared at the space above him and charged toward Duan Lingtian with their claws and fangs bared with a great momentum. First level Void Transformation Concept. First level Advanced Fire Concept. Grade 2 Spirit Weapon. This was the hideous young man's ability. He thought he could kill Duan Lingtian with one move, but he realized his attack was halted midair instead. He witnessed an unforgettable scene as he stared forward. Oh, God, what did he see? The purple-clad young man whom he had underestimated all these while, raised his hand and grabbed the mace. Keeping in mind that his attack was the equivalent of more than 500 ancient horned dragons' strength. How is that possible? The hideous young man's face changed dramatically before he focused his gaze and tried to draw back his mace that was caught by the purple-clad young man. In the space above the hideous young man's head, more than 500 ancient horned dragons' silhouettes were in a state of unrest. Even with his full strength, his mace was still in the hands of his opponent as if it was rooted there. 963 Chapter 964, Duan Lingtian's Strength. When Duan Lingtian saw the hideous young man's greed for the 9th level concept fragment and how he attacked him, Duan Lingtian laughed instead of being angry. A sneer hung on the corner of his mouth. Although his opponent's attacking mace was equivalent to the strength of more than 500 ancient horned dragons' strength and bore down menacingly like a meteor falling down, there was no fear in Duan Lingtian. The strength that was equivalent to more than 500 ancient horned dragons was nothing to him. He casually lifted his arm and caught his opponent's mace effortlessly. When Duan Lingtian grabbed the mace, that hideous young man's face changed dramatically. Duan Lingtian made another move when the hideous young man failed in drawing back his mace. Duan Lingtian waved his hand that was still holding on to the mace. He easily picked up the mace along with his opponent who was still grabbing onto it. In the next moment, a daunting strength grew in Duan Lingtian's hands as it rolled out in waves. No, the hideous young man's face changed when he saw that. He hurriedly dropped the mace in his hands and tried to retreat. At that moment, the purple-clad young man seemed like a god of slaughter in his eyes, a god of slaughter who could kill him at any time. Bang! As a loud bang sounded, a khaki energy entangled in green wind rolled off in waves as it drowned the hideous young man and killed him in just a blink of an eye. The young man's body continued flying like an arrow that was shot out even after he was killed. Pong! The body hit the wall of the cave in the distance, and all that was left behind was a pool of dazzling blood. He was dead. Wah! Meanwhile, the heaven and earth phenomenon formed in the space above Duan Lingtian. A total of 700 lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes slowly appeared. Nice! Duan Lingtian let out a breath. There was a burst of satisfaction in his heart. Previously, he merely utilized two types of concepts. The 2nd level Advanced Wind concept, and the 9th level Intermediate Earth concept. However, the two concepts merely amounted to 400 ancient horned dragons' strength. Therefore, apart from the two concepts, he also exerted the 2nd level Void Transformation's origin energy that had just undergone a transformation. Once Duan Lingtian exerted the 2nd level Void Transformation's origin energy, he experienced a whole new feeling. It was like the blood in his body was boiling. We've underestimated you. A cold voice spread timely into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian heard it and looked over. His gaze landed on the lean young man stood nearby, the one addressed as senior brother by the hideous young man. After Duan Lingtian killed the hideous young man, the lean young man was not angry or sad. He did not even express a hint of emotion. It was as though the one who died in Duan Lingtian's hands was not his junior brother but a person unrelated to him. He didn't flee. While the lean young man's cold gaze stared at him, Duan Lingtian was startled. Earlier, he had demonstrated a strength equivalent to 700 ancient horned dragon's strength without even using his spirit weapon. This 2nd level Void Transformation martial artist witnessed my fight, and he's not even intimidated. When Duan Lingtian probed the hideous young man's cultivation base, he also discovered the lean young man's cultivation base. It was at the 2nd level Void Transformation. Based on his knowledge, second-level void transformation martial artists usually comprehended first or second-level void transformation concept. Without utilizing spirit weapons, a person who mastered the second-level void transformation concept, including his full origin energy, could only exert 600 ancient horned dragons' strength at most. It was nowhere close to his 700 ancient horned dragons' strength. That was what confused Duan Lingtian. Why would the lean young man stay confident after he had witnessed Duan Lingtian's strength? Shortly after, Duan Lingtian got his answer when he saw the heaven and earth energy forming the heaven and earth phenomenon on the space above the lean young man. Origin energy raged around the lean young man's body and transformed into jets of khaki energies. It was a perfect combination of earth concept and origin energy. Subsequently, the khaki energy surrounding the lean young man's body seemed to resonate with the cave. The color deepened as a devastating aura exuded out. Simultaneously, in the space above the lean young man, 300 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. Then another 400 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. Finally, another 200 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. A second-level void transformation martial artist who fully exerted his origin energy would generate 300 ancient horned dragon's strength. A third-level advanced earth concept was equivalent to 400 ancient horned dragon's strength. Earth concept with the aid of earth energy gave an additional 50% that amounted to 200 ancient horned dragon's strength. Even without using a spirit weapon, the lean young man's strength was equivalent to 900 ancient horned dragons. It undoubtedly defeated the strength that Duan Lingtian had demonstrated that only amounted to 700 ancient horned dragon's strength. I see, when Duan Lingtian saw the lean young man's strength, he understood why he was so confident. His opponent had comprehended a third-level void transformation concept which was the earth concept. Nevertheless, Duan Lingtian's expression was not affected by the lean young man's strength. Instead, he was fascinated as he muttered, "Interesting." At that moment, the lean young man glared at Duan Lingtian with his cold gaze. He took a step forward and shouted, "Die!" As he stepped forward, a 3-foot-long blade appeared in his hand. The khaki energy rushed into the 3-foot-long blade from his body, and it quivered as if it had been brought to life. A crisp sword cry sounded. Wah! Instantly, more than 250 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared beside the 900 ancient horned dragon silhouettes at the space above the lean young man. It was apparent that the 3-foot-long blade in his hand was a grade 2 spirit sword. With second-level void transformation origin energy as the foundation, it amplified the strength to more than 230 ancient horned dragon's strength. It meant that grade 2 spirit sword in the lean young man's hands contained the strength of more than 1130 ancient horned dragon's strength. Shoo! In the split second when the grade 2 spirit sword let out a sword cry, the lean young man moved. He flashed by and stayed close to Duan Lingtian like a shadow. If Duan Lingtian had not broken through to the second-level void transformation, he might have panicked and found it difficult to match the lean young man's strength. However, the current Duan Lingtian was not nervous, his face was as calm as water. A sword suddenly materialized in his hands. The sword exuded a devastating aura. It was the quasi-royal grade spirit sword. Following that, the origin energy on Duan Lingtian's sword and transformed into a burst of khaki energy. Similar to the lean young man's khaki energy, it resonated with the cave. On the surface of the khaki energy, there were bolts of dark purple lightning and jets of green wind that exuded a wave of stunning aura. The khaki energy intertwined with lightning and green wind hastily rushed into quasi-royal grade spirit sword. It caused the sword chi on the quasi-royal grade spirit sword to surge, and a sword cry sounded. All of that happened in a blink of an eye. As heaven and earth energy began to stir at the space above Duan Lingtian, the lean young man had already appeared before Duan Lingtian with his sword. The distance between them was not more than a stone throw away. Shoo! He stabbed with his sword, and a sharp and extremely cold sword chi raged. It was like a cold wind was blowing on Duan Lingtian, it immediately caused him to squint his eyes. Sword drawing arts. Duan Lingtian lifted his sword without hesitation. Like a flash of lightning, the sword blocked in front of him. Jong! At that exact moment, the grade 2 spirit sword in the lean young man's hand clashed with the quasi-royal grade spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand, the tip of the sword on the body of the quasi-royal grade spirit sword. HNG! A cold snort laced with a hint of fear could be heard. The lean young man retreated quickly after he failed to strike, and he flew far away. The whole movement was as smooth as flowing water, it was clean and neat. Wah! Then, the heaven and earth phenomenon in the space above Duan Lingtian finally formed. The lean young man's eyes narrowed in shock after he saw the scene before him. There were 1250 ancient horned dragons silhouettes hovered in the space about Duan Lingtian, poised to attack. It gave off a huge sense of oppression. The lean young man quickly came back to his senses. His face changed, and he said disbelievingly, "Impossible. Nothing is impossible." Duan Lingtian moved in that split second when the lean young man's face changed. He moved like a ghost as he headed toward the lean young man. The quasi-royal grade spirit soared by his side like a shadow. Run. Faced with the incoming Duan Lingtian and the 1250 ancient horned dragon silhouettes above him, the lean young man's changed again. He had lost the will to fight and turned to flee. Trying to flee, Duan Lingtian laughed when he saw what was happening. Shoo! The quasi-royal grade spirit sword in his hand shot toward his opponent. 9 dragons radiant flash. Raging power surged and turned into 3 khaki divine dragons surrounded by lightning and green wind. The 3 divine dragons' eyes flashed, and 6 extremely radiant flashes shot out. Shoo, 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 comma. The 6 extremely radiant flashes shot across so quickly that it was beyond shocking. However, the lean young man had a quick reflex. He turned as Duan Lingtian attacked. He had intended to temporarily defend himself with his concept and the grade 2 spirit sword in his hands. Jong, one of the extreme radiant flashes was blocked, but his grade 2 spirit sword fell from his hands. His hands cracked and blood gushed out. However, he did not have the chance to stop the bleeding because there were 5 fatal and bloody wounds across his body, each at his vital organs. 964 Chapter 965, 8th Level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment. 5 bloody arrows shot through the lean young man's vital organs. His shimmering bright eyes dimmed as he trembled and then faltered. Boom! He was dead, and his body eventually fell and slammed on the ground. At the same time, the 3 khaki divine dragons surrounded by purple lightning and green energy dissipated in the air as if they were never there. Duan Lingtian kept the quasi-royal grade spirit sword he was holding in his hand. His eyes gleamed as it fell on the lean young man's body. He continued muttering, "I would not be a match for him if I did not make a breakthrough in my cultivation and progress to the 2nd level void transformation." Duan Lingtian was certain of that. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was not afraid even after realizing that. Even if he was no match for his opponent, or if he was incapable of escaping, the one who would die would not be him. It was because he had 2 amulets from his father only in name, Duan Rufeng. It was not difficult to kill a 2nd level void transformation martial artist. He had no fear because of that. He deemed it worthy to waste an amulet to save his life. After all, nothing was more important than one's life. Duan Lingtian kept the spatial rings and spirit weapons from the hideous young man and the lean young man into his own spatial ring. He guessed inwardly, these 2 people should also be from the second-rate forces. If they were not from the second-rate forces, they would not be so strong. That was how Duan Lingtian arrived at his conclusion. Their strength should be ranked at the top few places among all the young disciples from all the forces. Duan Lingtian guessed again. Now, I should start looking for the person who obtained the tricolor fruits. If a single person obtained all 3 of them, that person should only be able to consume 1 spirit fruit at the most. As the idea appeared, Duan Lingtian began a thorough search in all directions from the center of the cave to find the person who had obtained the tricolor fruits. If he managed to locate that person, he would be presented with a precious opportunity if that person was alone. If I manage to obtain 2 tricolor fruits, the medicinal efficacy will be sufficient to trigger the rebirth pill's potent medicinal efficacy, then I'll able to advance to the 5th level void transformation. Duan Lingtian was fairly certain of it. He understood the tricolor fruit's medicinal efficacies very well due to the rebirth martial emperor's memories. The tricolor fruits were enough for him to achieve the 4th level void transformation. With the addition of the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy, he was almost 100% certain he would be able to advance to the 5th level void transformation or even the 6th level void transformation. 5th level void transformation, 6th level void transformation, just the thought of it made Duan Lingtian excited, and his feet moved faster and faster. I sincerely hope all of the tricolor fruits were obtained by the same person and that he had indeed found a hidden spot nearby to cultivate so that I'll have a chance to find him and obtain the remaining spirit fruits. Duan Lingtian prayed as he searched thoroughly in all directions. On the other hand, in a hidden cave not too far away from the damp cave, a person was sitting cross-legged inside as he silently cultivated in a dark and gloomy cove. The cove was situated inside one of the grooves at the top corner of the hidden cave. It was extremely hidden. Most people would miss it while passing through. Judging from the looks of the groove, it was not weathered, so it was very likely that it was artificially made not too long ago. Suddenly, a breath was heard in the dark and gloomy cove. A voice filled with happiness and excitement sounded, "I finally managed to advance to the first level void transformation." The owner of the voice was none other than Zishang, who had obtained 3 spirit fruits a month ago. 1 month ago, Zishang tried to find a remote location to cultivate after obtaining the 3 spirit fruits. However, he failed to find a suitable place even after he looked for a long time. Eventually, he found this hidden cave and opened up a cove in an inconspicuous corner on top of the cave. The cove was against the light, thus there was no light in it. Unless someone outside purposefully and thoroughly searched, it would be almost impossible to discover the cave Zishang opened. Hence, Zishang had been cultivating in it with a peaceful mind. After a month, he finally absorbed the medicinal efficacy of one of the spirit fruits and managed to advance from 7th level void interpretation to 1st level void transformation. Quickly eat and absorb the other 2, that's the only way you'll be able to achieve anything in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Or else, you won't be able to defeat the leaders of the young disciples from second-rate forces even with my soul in you. A gloomy, hoarse and ancient voice echoed in Zishang's mind, reminding Zishang of the situation at hand. "Yes, Elder Ghost," Zishang answered respectfully when he heard the voice. He hurriedly took out another spirit fruit and ate it without delay. Shortly after, he was once again focused on his cultivation, improving rapidly. The current Zishang did not realize that his mortal enemy, Duan Lingtian, was thoroughly searching for him from the damp cave where he found the 3 spirit fruits. Duan Lingtian could arrive at any given time. Martial Emperor's secret treasure, in a cave as wide as a martial arts practice hall. Crushed stones were scattered all over the ground as it accumulated there. Among them, there were green fragments. There were hundreds of them, and all of it were wind concept fragments. 3 groups of people were in a standoff in the cave. At that moment, most of their gazes were on the exquisite box mounted in the center on top of the cave. It was obvious that everyone was interested and yearned for the treasures in it. A red-clad young man who stood beside a tall and strong young man took a deep breath and asked softly, "Daniu, are you confident?" The third man, who was slightly older, stood aside. He looked at the other 2 groups with a hint of panic in his gaze. "We'll have to try." The tall and strong youth was Huang Daniu, the disciple from Wood Peak of 5 Element Sect. His face was solemn as he stayed guarded. As for the ones who stood beside him, they were disciples of Blade Sect, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang. All of them met and became friends because of the same person. "Since everyone wants the treasure, let's battle for it," one of the groups shouted. They moved forward and flew toward another group. In just a second, 3 individuals from the former group easily overpowered the duo in the latter group. One of them was even in a life-or-death situation. Oh, no, Huang Daniu and his 2 companions did not expect that 3 individuals from the former group to be so strong. Their strength surpassed the duo and also surpassed the 3 of them. The 3 of them could imagine what was waiting for them once the duo was killed. "We'll help you." Huang Daniu and his companions flew out and joined the battle. They helped the duo resist the group who was stronger than them. It caused that group to be at a disadvantage. Soon after, a blue-clad young man from the former group, who had not shown his strength, exerted his real strength. 9th level void interpretation with 9th level intermediate earth concept. That turned the battle around. The 3 of them immediately became evenly matched with the 5 of them on Huang Daniu's side. However, Huang Daniu's side slowly slipped into a disadvantageous position since the other party had a 9th level void interpretation martial artist who had comprehended the 9th level intermediate earth concept. Damn, Huang Daniu and the others' faces took on an extremely ghastly expression. Finally, they were forced to retreat further. They look at the 3-person group from afar, their faces filled with discontentment. However, even if they were discontented, nothing could be done because they were no match for their opponents. The strongest youth among the 3-person group, glanced at them with disdain. He then flew upward to retrieve the exquisite box mounted at the center of the cave. Under Huang Daniu and the others' envious gazes, he opened the exquisite box. A piece of fragment shimmering with green energy appeared before their eyes. "That's," Huang Daniu stared. "A concept fragment, but it doesn't look like one. Concept fragment doesn't shimmer with energy, right? Is it a profundity fragment?" Zhang Shouyang swallowed his saliva and guessed with a shocked expression. Profundity fragment. Zhang Shouyang's speculation stunned Huang Daniyu and Su Li into silence. It's a profundity fragment, said one of the duo who stood beside Zhang Shouyang. At that moment, his eyes were trained on the fragment shimmering with green energy inside the exquisite box, his gaze seemed to be rooted to it. Congratulations, young one, this 8th level monarch stage wind profundity fragment is now yours. A familiar but strange voice was heard just as Zhang Shouyang and his two companions wondered how the young man beside them from unknown forces recognized the profundity fragment. The voice spread from the opened exquisite box. It was extremely penetrating, and it transmitted far away. A 8th level monarch stage profundity fragment. Huang Daniyu's pupils shrank. He looked at the young man who was holding the exquisite box with a killing intent. However, helplessness soon showed on his face. His opponent, like him, had comprehended Earth concept and could draw support from Earth energy. However, his opponent was also a 9th level void interpretation martial artist. Hence, he was no match for his opponent. Damn, it's an 8th level monarch stage profundity fragment. The duo's faces, who stood beside Huang Daniyu and his two companions, changed dramatically. 965. At this moment, both Su Li and Zhang Shouyang were completely stunned as well. A profundity fragment was enough to make them go crazy from surprise. It did not matter if the profundity fragment was low level, it was birthed from a martial monarch's body after all. To them, a martial monarch was an existence that only existed in rumors and was out of their reach. At this moment, the voice of the martial emperor who left the secret treasure behind entered their ears and reminded them that this profundity fragment was no ordinary monarch stage profundity fragment but an 8th level monarch stage profundity fragment instead. An 8th level monarch stage profundity fragment. There were a total of 9 levels for the monarch stage profundity fragment, and each level was stronger than the one before. The first level monarch stage profundity fragment could help a 9th level void transformation martial artist who had comprehended the 9th level void transformation concept to break through to the martial monarch stage and become a martial monarch powerhouse. Apart from being able to help a 9th level void transformation martial artist in obtaining a martial monarch stage cultivation base, the 8th level monarch stage profundity fragment also allowed one to raise the profundity that one had comprehended to the 8th level in just a flash after one made a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage. One could easily imagine just how precious this 8th level monarch stage profundity fragment was. The young man's gaze was fixed on the 8th level monarch stage wind profundity since the beginning. As he lifted up the exquisite box, he could not suppress the laughter that rose up from his chest. Ha 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 ha. His laughter quickly died down as he stared solemnly at Huang Daniyu and the 4 others, their faces were ghastly pale. Finally, his gaze landed on the 2 young men standing beside Huang Daniyu. It was Su Li and Zhang Shouyang. The people from Anicha sector all trash. The young man exclaimed unhurriedly, his tone was derisive. You, the 2 Anicha sect's disciples, faces darkened when they were mocked. They were so angry that they were speechless for a long time. The Anicha sect, the moment they heard the young man's words, Huang Daniyu and the other 2 were momentarily taken aback. They did not think the people they helped out earlier were actually disciples from Anicha sect. No wonder the both of them were so strong. Even the people from the second-rate forces are here. Huang Daniyu and the other 2 exchanged glances with each other. For a second, they could see the shock in each other's eyes. Although they knew that the martial emperor's secret treasure had other entrances, they had no idea what kind of people would enter from the entrances. Presently, it seemed like even the people from the second-rate forces were here as well. The people from Anicha sector trash. Azumo sect's people are just the same as well. Without warning, an aloof voice echoed inside the cavern. A figure appeared soundlessly before everyone's eyes. It was a black-clad young man with an evil face and a cold look. His eyes appeared lifeless, yet it contained a murderous intent that gave off an invisible sense of pressure. Nobody knew when the black-clad young man appeared. It was only when the black-clad young man began talking that everyone, including Huang Daniyu, noticed him. Colors drained from the face of the Azumo sect's disciple who was holding the exquisite box. He glared at the black-clad young man with dread in his eyes as he asked, "Who are you?" "Dead man, there's no need for you to know who I am," the black-clad young man spoke again. His voice remained cold. Before anybody could figure out what was happening, he morphed and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Where is he? Huang Daniyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang were still bewildered when they suddenly saw something flashed past their eyes. Wham! The sound of a heavy thud reverberated. In the next second, they saw the Azumo sect's disciple, who was holding the exquisite box that contained the 8th level monarch stage wind profundity fragment, suddenly drop to the ground without warning. There were no signs of injury on his body at all. However, everyone, including Huang Daniyu, could see that he was no longer breathing. It was apparent that he had been killed. The black-clad young man stood beside the Azumo sect's disciple with a calm expression as though the Azumo sect's disciple's death had nothing to do with him at all. Nobody knew when, but the exquisite box that was originally in the Azumo sect's disciple's hands was already in his hands. The 8th level monarch stage wind profundity fragment was constantly gleaming with waves of blue kai. That's fast. When Huang Daniyu and the others looked at the young man in black again, their eyes were narrowed in shock. From the very beginning until now, they did not have any clue at all in regards to when the black-clad young man killed that Azumo sect's disciple. That person's speed was incredibly fast. Even a martial artist at the 1st or 2nd level void transformation would not be so fast, right? Huang Daniyu thought to himself. Horror quickly dawned on Huang Daniyu's face. This was because he noticed the black-clad young man's cold eyes began looking at them after he put away that exquisite box in his hands. Killing intent flashed out for a moment. At that moment, everyone, including Huang Daniyu, was immediately on their guards as though they were facing their mortal enemy. At this moment, the black-clad young man opened his mouth to say, "If any of you can resist and survive my first blow, you may live." His voice was cold and detached, yet it made Huang Daniyu and the others seized in panic. Before they could figure out what was happening, the black-clad young man had already lifted his right leg and stomped on the ground like lightning. It was as though he had a great hatred toward the ground. Wham! When the black-clad young man stomped his foot, a loud sound reverberated in the air. The airwave was so terrifying that colors drained from the faces of Huang Daniyu and the others. Crack! In the next instance, all of them could see that countless cracks began to spread in all directions from the place where the black-clad young man's foot landed. It looked like a giant spider web. The numerous cracks that spread out contained 7 waves of appalling force that fanned out along with the cracks, and it rolled toward the 7 of them, including Huang Daniyu. Damn it! Horror dawned on Huang Daniyu and Zhang Shouyang instantly. They were martial artists who had comprehended the earth concept, so their senses toward it were very keen. They could clearly sense that these 7 forces were earth concept. Moreover, it was advanced earth concept, and its level was not low. The moment horror dawned on their faces, they could only adjust and control the earth concept they had comprehended hastily to strike a resonance with the earth in an attempt to resist the overbearing earth concept. When Huang Daniyu made his move, he yelled out to remind Su Li, fly. The instant Su Li heard the speech from that black-clad young man, he was already tensed and on his guard. When he heard Huang Daniyu's sudden cry, he rushed up into the air without wasting any more time. Boom, 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 comma. Almost immediately after Su Li leapt into the sky, the sound of explosions filled the air. All Su Li could feel was a terrifying wave of impact that pushed him to the top of the cavern. It caused him to hit the top of the cavern with a thud, without any warning, and it made him dizzy. As for Huang Daniyu and Zhang Shouyang, they did not suffer much from the impact and only spat out a mouthful of blood because they managed to cast their earth concepts in a timely manner and resonated with the earth. As for the 2 remaining Azumo sect's disciples and the 2 Anicha sect's disciples, they were not as lucky as the other 3. 4 of them exploded, and all that was left was the remains of their bodies and blood that covered the entire ground. You guys are lucky, the aloof voice echoed once again and entered Huang Daniyu and the others' ears. It was the black-clad young man's voice. The moment the words left his mouth, the black-clad young man disappeared before Huang Daniyu and the other 2 people's eyes without a trace. Damn it, just wait until my strength is better than his, I won't let him get away. Huang Daniyu fumed. Su Li finally managed to stabilize himself and descended from the air. When he saw the 5 large pits that appeared on the cavern's vast ground, he asked with widened eyes, what happened? That guy used his earth concept to attack us earlier. Other than Zhang Shouyang and I, who could communicate with the earth with our earth concept in time to obtain shelter from the earth and resist his earth concept, the earth concept that swept toward you guys exploded, Huang Daniyu explained with a hint of dread in his voice. I was scared to death earlier. It was a good thing that you, Daniyu, reminded Su Li in time, or else, he would most likely end up like them. Fear still lingered upon Zhang Shouyang's face as he looked at the remains of the bodies on the blood-covered ground. Daniyu, thank you, Su Li expressed his gratitude to Huang Daniyu. It was indeed due to the reminder from Huang Daniu earlier that he managed to soar up into the air promptly and escape the exploding Earth concept. You don't have to thank me, I merely reminded you unconsciously. What's most important is that you managed to react in time and soared up into the sky. Otherwise, it would be hard for you to escape this death even with my reminder, Huang Daniu proclaimed as he shook his head. When he reached the end of his sentence, his face turned grave before he continued again, who the hell was that guy? He didn't even see us as living beings. Even after he obtained the profundity fragment, he still wanted to kill us. The moment Su Li and Zhang Shouyang heard his words, their faces turned grave as well. With just a few words, the black-clad young man had taken control of their destinies. That feeling left them with a very bitter taste in their mouths. In the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, in another cavern that was a great distance away from the cavern that Huang Daniu and the two others were in, a series of loud sound echoed from the cavern. It only died down and became silent after a very long time. Two young men were standing inside the cavern. The ground around them was fully covered in stones. Hundreds of blue fragments were scattered among the stones as well. They were none other than the water concept fragments. If Duan Lingtian was here, he would definitely be able to identify the two young men in just a glance as the two Sun Moon sect's young disciples who survived previously. Hu Lin and Zhang Ping. Hu Lin, there are so many puppets guarding the treasure here. I'm sure it must be something extraordinary, right? If one was to look at the top of in the center of the cavern, one would see an exquisite box embedded there. It was obvious that some extraordinary treasure was contained in there. Why don't you take it down and have a look? Hu Lin answered indifferently. With a flash of his figure, he proceeded to remove the exquisite box. Whoosh! At this moment, a combination of extreme coldness and heat suddenly spread through the air. The contradictory combination caused Hu Lin to stop in his track. Both Hu Lin and Zhang Ping's faces turned grave immediately. In the next second, a figure appeared before their eyes. It's you! Hu Lin and Zhang Ping's face turned a shade darker when they saw the young man before them. This young man was no stranger to them. It was none other than the person leading the group of emotion-severing sect's disciples, Zhang Yan. Rate translation quality, 966. Ah, so it's you too. With an aloof expression, Zhang Yan stared at the two Sun Moon sect's disciples before he replied nonchalantly, the two of you are really lucky. You actually stumbled upon a profundity fragment, huh? Profundity fragment. The moment they heard Zhang Yan's words, both Hu Lin and Zhang Ping could not help but narrow their eyes immediately, their face had a stunned expression as well. After a moment, Hu Lin returned to his senses first. The first thing he did was to stare at the exquisite box embedded in the top center of the cavern before he muttered to himself, you mean the treasure contained inside the exquisite box is actually a profundity fragment? In the face of Hu Lin's inquiry, Zhang Yan said, it has nothing to do with you anymore whether the profundity fragment is inside the box or not. His voice was tranquil and as bleak as harsh winter, there were no emotions in it at all. Zhang Ping had just returned to his senses, and he unconsciously asked, why? This is because a dead man doesn't need to know so many whys. Zhang Yan spoke with his calm voice again. The moment the words left his mouth, he had already made his move. He lifted both of his hands and bent his arms back as his back quivered for a moment. Both of his arms and back were pulled taut like a strong bow. The quivering back was like a bow that was pulled tautly. Slightly trembling, it looked like it was about to launch an arrow at any given time. What a shameless boast! Upon hearing Zhang Yan's words, Zhang Ping finally regained his full senses. Hu Lin, on the other hand, snorted as the origin energy rolling from his body swept out while his concepts followed closely like shadows. Swish! In the next second, another 3-foot-long blade appeared in his hands. It was none other than the Grade 2 spirit sword that he brought along with him. Whoosh! Hu Lin's eyes were cold and distant. As though he had transformed into a hurricane, he slashed his knife at Zhang Yan without any reservation. The heaven and earth energy whirled on the sky and gathered a total of over 600 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that bared their claws and fangs at Zhang Yan in an overbearing manner. The first level void transformation. Second level advanced sword concept. As the most powerful person among the current Sun Moon sect's disciples, this was Hu Lin's real strength. Swish! Just as Hu Lin made his move, Zhang Ping regained his senses as well. A Grade 2 spirit saber appeared in his hands out of thin air, and his origin energy indulged in a wanton massacre as his concept entered it. Without any hesitation, he joined forces with Hu Lin to charge at Zhang Yan. There was a total of over 500 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons above Zhongping's head. It was just 100 silhouettes fewer than Hulin. The first level void transformation. The first level advanced saber concept. Zhongping, the second strongest person among the current Sun Moon sect's disciples, possessed a strength that was second only to Hulin. Hulin and Zhongping swept out toward Zhong Yan, one holding a saber while the other was holding a sword, and aimed at his vital point with no mercy. Zhong Yan's palms were wide opened, and his arms were pulled back. His back that was like a strong bow trembled slightly as the Grade 2 spirit weapon gloves on his hand had an additional wave of blue flame around them. The hot and cold aura coexisted together. The contradictory combination compressed the airflow in the air and set off a series of spontaneous explosions one after another. Whoosh! Just as the Grade 2 Spirit Sword and Grade 2 Spirit Saber on Hulin and Zhongping's hands charged toward Zhong Yan, the heaven and earth energy above Zhong Yan finally gathered to become the heaven and earth phenomenon. 978 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons descended in a spiral as though they were poised to attack. It gave off an extremely fearful pressure. No, initially, Hulin and Zhongping were filled with confidence and thought they could kill Zhong Yan, but horror instantly dawned on them the moment they saw the heaven and earth phenomenon appearing above Zhong Yan's head. Zhongping even cried out in shock. Boom, boom, just as Hulin and Zhongping's faces dramatically changed, and Zhongping let out a shriek of terror, Zhong Yan finally made his move. Both of his arms that were pulled taut like a bow trembled for a moment, and his back stopped quivering immediately. Both palms that contained soaring blue flames blasted out swiftly and shrouded both Hulin and Zhongping as it went head-to-head with both of their overbearing attacks. Between Hulin and Zhongping, Hulin was the stronger of the two. However, Hulin's power only amounted to the strength of over 600 ancient horned dragons even when he unleashed his full power. In the face of Zhong Yan's crushing attack that contained the strength of over 900 ancient horned dragons, one could easily imagine the result of this amount of power. Boom, boom. In just a flash of a lightning, both Hulin and Zhongping were slaughtered by Zhong Yan without any mishaps. After the two of them were blasted to death, their bodies were thrown off with a force that was not diminished. Like an arrow that was shot out from the bow, they smashed on the cavern wall at the distance and stirred up the dust. Since then, all of Sun Moon sect's disciples who entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure were completely annihilated. After killing Hulin and Zhongping, Zhong Yan casually soared up into the sky like nothing had happened and took down the exquisite box that was embedded at the top center of the cavern. He was in no rush to open the box. Through a strange coincidence, his gaze unconsciously landed on the hundreds of water concept fragments that were mixed with the stone gravels on the cavern ground. According to my previous experience, the profundity fragment that's contained in this box must be the water profundity fragment. Zhong Yan's breathing turned rapid immediately the moment he thought of this. The fire concept fragment was useless to him. However, the water profundity fragment was extremely meaningful to him. He could use it to comprehend water profundity in the future. After all, he could easily condense water into ice and transform ice into water because he had cultivated the supreme emotion forsaking technique. To him, comprehending the water concept and water profundity were equivalent to comprehending the ice concept and ice profundity. Zhong Yan inhaled deeply as he opened the exquisite box. Almost at the same time as the moment the box was opened, Zhong Yan could not help but narrow his eyes instantly. A fragment that was gleaming with aqua blue kai appeared before his eyes. Congratulations! This 8th level Monarch stage water profundity fragment is now yours. At the same time, a familiar yet foreign voice entered Zhong Yan's ears. Moreover, it had a terrifying penetrating energy that spread out to the distance. Shit! Upon hearing the voice, Zhong Yan did not dare to slack and hurriedly flew out from the cavern as fast as he could. After the lesson last time, he did not dare to take any more risk. Previously, he finally got his hands on a fire profundity fragment, but due to Feng Tianwu's appearance, it had fallen into her hands instead. Just as the saying went, once bitten, twice shy. In order to not repeat the same mistake again, Zhong Yan immediately took his leave without wasting any time. Swish, swish. The moment Zhong Yan left, two foreboding figures appeared inside the cavern at the same time. The two of them frowned when they saw the water concept fragment on the ground. In the next second, the two of them exchanged glances tacitly and asked in unison, "Is the water profundity fragment in your hand?" The two men looked at each other meaningfully before they left to find the person who had obtained the 9th level Monarch stage water profundity fragment. Inside the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, in one of the caverns. Swoosh! A purple lightning-like figure entered the cavern nimbly and carefully and studied the surrounding. Not letting any details off, it was as though he was searching for something. The owner of the figure was none other than Duan Lingtian. It had been around 10 days after he had made a breakthrough to the second-level void transformation. During this period of time, Duan Lingtian held 2 concept fragments in his hands to comprehend 2 concepts at the same time while he searched everywhere inch by inch for the person who had the tricolor fruits. Even if I managed to find that person now, I'm afraid it's very likely that he had already consumed 2 of the spirit fruits. After searching the cavern and finding nothing, Duan Lingtian flew off and entered another cavern. Duan Lingtian searched through the caverns one by one patiently. Very soon, he entered a cavern that was relatively remote and started his search again, not leaving any nooks and crannies unsearched. In an inconspicuous corner at the top of the cavern where a tiny dark cave was situated, a white-clad young man sat cross-legged as he cultivated quietly. "Zishang lad, it looks like you and this Duan Lingtian always run into each other." All of a sudden, a gloomy, hoarse, and ancient voice echoed in the white-clad young man's mind, slapping him awake from his cultivation. Duan Lingtian, the white-clad young man was none other than Zishang. After hearing the voice in his mind, a cold gleam flashed across his eyes in the dark as though he was about to devour a certain somebody. Naturally, the name, Duan Lingtian, was no stranger to him. From the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom until now, that guy was like his mortal enemy. No matter where he went or how high he stood, he would always appear before him. Moreover, it drove him crazy that he was always in a disadvantageous position in all the repeated confrontations with that opponent. Originally, he stood a chance to obtain great power since he had a powerhouse's remnant soul attached to his own body, but he was restrained by a stone tablet that this person held. This was already more than enough to drive him crazy with frustration. "Duan Lingtian, it's really you." Sitting in the dark small cavern, Zishang's gaze immediately landed on the purple figure outside of the cavern. His eyes were filled with extreme hatred. The moment when Zishang's narrowed eyes landed on Duan Lingtian frowned as though he could feel that he was being closely watched by someone. At the same time, he lifted up his head without warning and looked at the remote corner on top of the cavern. A dark hole that was big enough to accommodate one person entered his line of vision. Just as Duan Lingtian was about to use his spiritual energy to probe inside the cavern, he suddenly saw a white figure flew out from inside the cavern and descended before his eyes. Zishang. Upon seeing the white-clad young man, Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes and asked in bewilderment, "Why you're not dead?" At this moment, Duan Lingtian was completely engulfed in shock. That time, when they had just entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, Zishang sneaked attack him on the high platform and fell into the bottomless abyss with him. Apart from that, both of them had even dueled in the bottomless abyss. In that battle, he used the strength of 1,000 ancient horned dragons to suppress Zishang's strength of 878 ancient horned dragons and almost killed Zishang. At the crucial moment, Zishang took out the Devilseal tablet's lost fragment to distract him before falling into the bottomless abyss on his own. Duan Lingtian thought that he would have certainly died. However, who knew that not only did Zishang manage to survive, he even appeared right before his eyes. 967. You're still not dead, so how can I, Zishang, possibly be dead? Zishang smirked. Duan Lingtian, looks like we really do run into each other quite a lot. I can't believe that I would actually meet you here. Today, I, Zishang, will settle all old scores with you. I, Zishang, will make sure you die a graveless death. As Zishang reached the end of his sentence, his face was filled with confidence and killing intent gleamed in his eyes. In this instance, he was like a bloodthirsty beast that might pounce on Duan Lingtian at any given time. Die a graveless death. Duan Lingtian was stunned by Zishang's confident words. He did not know where Zishang's confidence came from. It was only when he extended his spiritual energy out that he finally got the answer that he was looking for. First level void transformation. This Zishang actually made a breakthrough to the first level void transformation. Upon discovering Zishang's cultivation base, Duan Lingtian could not help but gasp out loud. An unnoticeable hint of shock appeared in his eyes instantly. He knew about Zishang's cultivation base very well. That time, when they had just entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, although Zishang had demonstrated quite an extraordinary strength, the strength mainly came from his 2 void transformation concepts. His cultivation base was only at the 7th level void transformation. It had only been a short period of time, and Zishang had already crossed over 3 levels and broke through to the first level void transformation in just one go. Impossible. Duan Lingtian was bewildered when a pang of realization suddenly hit him hard in the head. He immediately remembered the reason why he came here in the first place. This Zishang is hiding inside such a secluded small cavern. Was he cultivating inside there? He easily crossed over 3 levels in such a short period to make a breakthrough to the first level void transformation. Don't tell me that he's the one who obtained the tricolor fruits. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he could not help but narrow his eyes immediately. What a coincidence! At this time, Duan Lingtian could not help but recall the scene that he saw inside the wet cavern where he found the tricolor plant. The scars on the 2 bodies were inflicted by the same person. Moreover, that person actually used a spear-like weapon. And, the weapon that Zishang used was none other than a spear. What a fate this is! Not only are Zishang and me enemies who run into each other a lot, it looks like the thing that I've been searching for more than 10 days is actually with him as well. As Duan Lingtian thought of this, his gaze as he looked at Zishang became colder in an instant. Since you want me to die a graveless death, bring it on then. I'll make you realize that I can kill you today even though I let you escape the last time. Duan Lingtian scoffed as he responded to Zishang's provocation. Colors of disdain filled his entire face. Haha, Duan Lingtian, do you really think I'm still the same person as I was before? Zishang burst out laughing like a maniac when he saw the disdain on Duan Lingtian's face. As he reached the end of his sentence, his tone turned ruthless. Today, I, Zishang, will send you up to heaven. You, Duan Lingtian, better remember to not provoke me, Zishang, again when you reincarnate. Zishang snarled out loud. The moment the words left his mouth, a 7-foot-long spear appeared in his hand. It was his Grade 2 Spirit Spear. The instant the Grade 2 Spirit Spear appeared, it immediately became entangled with a milky origin energy that merged with his fire concept nimbly before transforming into a vast flame that danced around the spear like a fiery dragon. Very soon, the wind concept transformed into wind kai and surged into the fiery dragon and made it soar up without warning and radiated a stronger aura. Fueling fire concept with wind concept. Whoosh! The heaven and earth energy in the sky world as the heaven and earth phenomenon emerged. Finally, it gathered into over 1050 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that writhed as they descended in an imposing manner. Initially, when Zishang's cultivation base was still at the 7th level void interpretation, he had relied on his 3rd level advanced wind concept, 1st level advanced fire concept, and the technique of fueling fire concept with wind concept to demonstrate the strength of 876 ancient horned dragons along with the help of his Grade 2 Spirit Spear. At this moment, his cultivation base had already made a breakthrough to the 1st level void transformation, and when he unleashed his full origin energy, it was equivalent to the strength of 200 ancient horned dragons. It was 100 ancient horned dragons more than the strength he possessed when he was still at the 7th level void interpretation. Coupled with the 78% strength boost given by the Grade 2 Spirit Spear, his current strength was 178 ancient horned dragons more than the strength that he possessed previously. Due to this reason, Zishang's cultivation base that broke through to the 1st level void transformation had a strength that was equivalent to over 1050 ancient horned dragons when he unleashed his full power. Zishang's confidence was clearly written on his face as he held the Grade 2 Spirit Spear in his hand. In his opinion, the strength that Duan Lingtian unleashed previously was only equivalent to the strength of 1000 ancient horned dragons. It was over 50 ancient horned dragons fewer than his. It would be as easy as snapping fingers for him to kill Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, die! As Zishang's eyes turned colder and killing intent filled his face, he roared out loud. The Grade 2 Spirit Spear that was intertwined with wind and fire energy suddenly quivered as it stabbed toward Duan Lingtian. Whoosh! As Zishang flew forward and the Grade 2 Spirit Spear quivered, the spear ray that blotted out the entire sky showered down like meteor rain and was aimed toward the place where Duan Lingtian was at. Faced with the vast spear ray that blotted out the sky, Duan Lingtian did not even bat an eyelid as he asked with his expression unchanged, "You're no longer the same person that you were, so what makes you think that I'm still like my former self? You're just acting." When Zishang saw Duan Lingtian still remained unperturbed by his attack that contained the strength of over 1050 ancient horned dragons, a brilliance flashed across Zishang's eyes. The strength of the Grade 2 Spirit Spear in his hands burst out even more. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The wind fire spear ray that spread all over the sky showered down and fully enveloped Duan Lingtian. It was apparent that he intended to annihilate Duan Lingtian. You'll find out very soon whether it's just an act or not. Duan Lingtian scoffed. With a raise of his hand, a sword appeared in it. A sword that faintly emanated a destruction aura, the quasi-royal grade spirit sword. The moment the quasi-royal grade spirit sword appeared, the origin energy on Duan Lingtian's body surged up and transformed into a khaki energy that was tangled with purple lightning and blue wind kai before merging with the quasi-royal grade spirit sword. Swish! In an instant, the sword ray on the quasi-royal grade spirit sword burst out and emitted a series of crisp sword-whirring sound. At the same time, the heaven and earth energy above Duan Lingtian mobilized and began to brew into the heaven and earth phenomenon. Before the heaven and earth phenomenon could solidify into form, Zisheng's encompassing spear ray attack had already reached and landed on Duan Lingtian's head in an overbearing manner. Apart from setting off a series of ear-piercing wind-whistling sound, the place where the spear rays passed by also set of numerous rolling waves that produced a flurry of hurricane that wreaked havoc in the cavern as it stirred up dust all over the place. The hurricane swept out, it made Duan Lingtian's purple clothing flutter in the wind, and it resulted in him looking even more dapper in appearance. Faced with the invading hurricane, Duan Lingtian did not even flinch. His gaze was fixed upon the encompassing spear ray that was falling down on him. At this moment, all that was left in his vision was only the spear ray. When Zisheng saw how Duan Lingtian was shrouded in the encompassing spear ray and was about to be blasted to death, a wanton smile appeared on Zisheng's face as he cried out loud in excitement, "Die!" The power of the Grade 2 Spirit Spear in his hand continued to surge out. However, in the next moment, the smile on his face froze instantly. He could clearly see that Duan Lingtian had made his move in the face of the encompassing spear ray that he had cast. Like a flash of lightning, a sword lashed out, and in the place where the sword passed through, the spear ray was completely wiped out. Impossible. Upon seeing this scene, Zisheng quickly shook his head. He refused to believe this to be true. However, when he inadvertently saw the 1,200 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that had already completed its solidification process above Duan Lingtian's head, he froze and was completely stunned. It did not cross his mind that Duan Lingtian's improvement would actually be greater than his in just such a short time. The strength Duan Lingtian displayed this time was 200 ancient horned dragons more compared to last time. It was a lot more than his own improvement. Naturally, Zisheng was not aware that even with the strength of 1,200 ancient horned dragons that Duan Lingtian had, Duan Lingtian still did not unleash his full power yet. Otherwise, if he used his earth concept to borrow the earth energy, he could still have an additional strength of 50 ancient horned dragons. It was 50% more than the earth concept energy that he possessed currently. Swoosh! With a slash of his sword and without casting any technique, Duan Lingtian easily shattered each and every spear ray that was falling down on him in an overbearing manner as though he was playing some game. In the face of absolute power, no technique could make an impact no matter how powerful the technique was. At this moment, the strength that was contained in Duan Lingtian's sword was 140 ancient horned dragons more than Zisheng's full power. Both of them were at totally different levels. Zisheng, after crushing the encompassing spear ray, the power of the quasi-royal grade spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand did not diminish as it charged toward Zisheng swiftly. No technique was used at all in this process. Whoosh! The sword that contained the strength of 1,200 ancient horned dragons slashed forward and caused the air flows in the air to whirl and set off a series of ear-blasting explosion sound as airwaves and hurricanes swept out all over the place. Swish! In the face of Duan Lingtian's sword, Zisheng did not dare to be reckless. With a solemn face, he went head-to-head with the spear in his hand. Wind and fire energy surged up from the spear as the spear ray whisked out like a divine dragon with its mouth wide open as though wanting to swallow the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. Clang! Finally, the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand and the spear in Zisheng's hand collided. Two waves of blood-curdling energy clashed and produced an appallingly loud noise. Boom, 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 a series of thunder-like explosion reverberated in the air and roused a rolling airwave that resulted in a flurry of hurricanes sweeping out and wreaking havoc in the cavern. No corner could escape the wanton persecution at all. Crack, 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 Zisheng's face was awfully pale. His body shuddered without warning as countless of cracks began to appear from the place where his feet stood like a horrendous spider web. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian flew down to a lower altitude with a calm look on his face before he casually used the quasi-royal grade in his hand to obstruct the tip of the grade 2 spirit spear in Zishang's hand. Scram! All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian roared out loud as the quasi-royal grade spirit sword in his hand burst out with a great force before sweeping out and enveloping Zishang entirely like crushing dead leaves. Wham! In the next moment, Zishang flew out along with his spear and forcefully slammed into the wall at the side of the cavern. After he landed on the ground, he was only able to stand back up firmly with the help of the spirit spear in his hand as a support. Rate translation quality, 968, Elder Ghost. Although Zishang had a grade 2 spirit spear supporting him, he could not stop spitting blood from his mouth as he kneeled on one knee on the ground. As his blood flowed, a dazzling river was formed on the ground before him. All he could feel at the moment was that all of the strength in his body had been exhausted. He no longer had any strength left to fight Duan Lingtian. Under such a circumstance, the only thing that he could depend on was Ghost Flame, who was lurking in his body. However, Ghost Flame did not respond to Zishang this time. Elder Ghost, Zishang proceeded to call out worriedly. However, Ghost Flame did not respond to him as though he had completely vanished. At that moment, Zishang noticed that something was wrong. He lifted up his head with difficulty and looked at the purple-clad young man walking toward him step by step. His heart jolted when he saw the chipped tablet in the purple-clad young man's hand, and he did not know when it had appeared. He finally figured out why Ghost Flame had ignored him. Duan Lingtian took out the Devil Seal tablet that was able to suppress Ghost Flame. Naturally, that would mean that it was impossible for Ghost Flame to show himself and help him. Duan Lingtian, Zishang could not help but clench his teeth as he stared at the purple-clad young man nearby. Apart from anger, there was a mix of bitterness in his eyes. He knew he was doomed. With the grudge between him and Duan Lingtian, it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to let him go even if he surrendered and begged. Therefore, Zishang stood up and strenuously relied on the grade 2 spirit spear. He glared at Duan Lingtian with his eyes that were filled with grudge. Duan Lingtian. I won't forgive you even if I'm dead. I won't forgive you even if I become a ghost. Duan Lingtian held the Devil Seal tablet in one hand to prevent Zishang from obtaining help from what seemed to be a martial emperor's soul remnant in his body to fight, and a sword in the other hand as he looked at Zishang coldly. Zishang would definitely die as soon as Duan Lingtian swung the sword in his hand. He heard what Zishang said and could not help but laugh. Soon, he glared at Zishang with disdain and said calmly, Zishang, is that what you really think? I'm not afraid of you when you're alive, why would I be afraid of you when you're dead? Ha ha ha, at that moment, Zishang began to laugh. It was strange, and his laugh was delirious and without pretense. What are you laughing at? Duan Lingtian frowned and stared at Zishang coldly. Zishang's laughter gradually died down. However, he still had a smile on his face, it was a cold and cunning smile. Zishang looked at Duan Lingtian as though he was looking at a dead body as he grinned. Duan Lingtian, so what if you kill me? As long as the Skywolf Fort's senior officials find out the Devil Seal tablet is in your hands, they'll never let you go. I'll be waiting for you in hell. I'll definitely be waiting for you. Zishang began to laugh again as he spoke. It was as if he could see the scene where Duan Lingtian was being killed by a group of senior officials from the Skywolf Fort. You take your time and wait then. Duan Lingtian grinned, he lifted his arm and swung his sword towards Zishang. The swing of the sword caused the relief expression on Zishang's face to change dramatically, and he could not help but groan in a deep voice. Duan Lingtian did not kill Zishang immediately. The sword in his hand landed on Zishang's right wrist, and he swung it down all of the sudden. Pooh! Blood spewed out when Duan Lingtian broke Zishang's tendon with a swing of the sword. Zishang's body that was left with one hand was trembling. Fortunately, Zishang could use the other hand to hold on tight to the grade 2 spirit spear. Otherwise, he would have definitely fallen head first on the ground. Whoosh! Unfortunately, Zishang could not endure it anymore as Duan Lingtian swung his sword for the second time and broke the tendon in his remaining hand, and he fell on the ground. It was unbearable to watch. Duan Lingtian, if you're a man, kill me once and for all. If you don't, you're a bastard raised by a whore. Zishang groaned again and stared madly at Duan Lingtian, who was looking at him as he lifted his head. He shouted loudly with the intention to provoke Duan Lingtian so that he would kill him once and for all. After Zishang spoke, Duan Lingtian's eyes were covered with a layer of red all of a sudden. Zisheng could insult anything about him, but it was unforgivable for him to insult his mother. You want to die once and for all. I'm not going to doing that. I'll let you die a long and torturous death. At that moment, Duan Lingtian's voice was extremely cold as though it came from a thaw hole. Anyone would have goosebumps hearing that voice. Zisheng's expression changed dramatically. He wanted to provoke Duan Lingtian initially, but he did not expect it to backfire. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian swung his sword once again in an arc as he chopped off one of Zisheng's legs slowly. During the procedure, Zisheng could not endure it any longer and wailed in devastation. Duan Lingtian, you're a devil. You're a devil, Zisheng yelled loudly when he had a respite as Duan Lingtian put his sword away. Whoosh! However, Duan Lingtian swung the sword in his hand once again. Zisheng shrieked agonizingly as his other leg was chopped off. His face was pale, but it regained its color soon after he used origin energy to staunch the bleeding from the wound. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's expression was cold as he swung the sword in his hand again as his eyes gleamed. He broke Zisheng's dantian instantly. Ah! At this moment, Zisheng passed out immediately after releasing a shriek. At the same time, the origin energy that was used to staunch the bleeding on Zisheng's body vanished. Blood was flowing out continuously from the wounds on his 4 limbs. Very quickly, it turned into a river and drowned his body in it. Up until that moment, the fierce gleam in Duan Lingtian did not fade away at all. In his past life on Earth, he was an orphan who had no parents. He had a mother named Li Ru when he arrived in this world. The love that Li Ru gave him had caused him to treat Li Ru like his birth mother. If he was asked who mattered the most to him in the world, it would undoubtedly be Li Ru, his mother in this life. As the saying went, every dragon has a reverse scale, one would definitely die if one touches it. His mother was his reverse scale. He was enraged when Zisheng insulted his mother earlier. He was so angry that he could no longer suppress his emotion. Fu! Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed fiercely when he noticed that Zisheng would soon die from blood loss while he was passed out. He lifted his arm and took out a bottle of hard liquor that had never been opened from his spatial ring. After opening the seal on the hard liquor bottle, Duan Lingtian then poured the hard liquor on Zisheng's head. Zisheng was passed out, but he woke up with a jerk from the ice-cold hard liquor. However, the only thing Zisheng could feel was a devastating pain all over his body when he woke up, and he began to wail in pain. How could he maintain his composure from earlier? Zisheng's cultivation base was completely destroyed, and he could no longer use origin energy to staunch the bleeding from his wounds. The only thing he could do was to look at the blood flowing out his body. Very soon, Zisheng closed his eyes and passed out again. Duan Lingtian patiently poured the hard liquor on Zisheng's head again, and again, waking Zisheng waking up over and over again in return. He would let out devastating wails repeatedly before passing out again. Duan Lingtian, please just kill me. I beg you, I'm begging you. Zisheng's face was ashen, and his breath was weak but he could not stop begging. You should have known this would be the consequence from the moment you insulted my mother. Duan Lingtian ignored Zisheng and continued to torture him. Half an hour later, Zisheng's head fell hard onto the ground. He had lost his breath completely and died of blood loss. Zisheng was dead, he was really dead. Duan Lingtian's rage faded gradually when Zisheng died. He looked into Zisheng's eyes again. Although there was still cold gleam shining in his eyes, there was no longer unforgivable hatred like before. Duan Lingtian became a little absent-minded as he stared at Zisheng's body. At this moment, he could not help but recall the time when he first saw Zisheng. Zisheng was riding on a flying beast when he landed on the peak of 7-star Sword Sect's Dubi Peak in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. He had intended to have an affair with his fiancée, Kair. Conflict sparked between him and Zisheng after that, and they established a 2-year agreement. Throughout the 2 years, he defeated Zisheng, whose cultivation base was a couple of levels higher than him, easily with his soul skill 1000 illusions. Zisheng left unwillingly. That time when he met Zisheng again was at the Darken Dynasty's martial competition. The conflict between him and Zisheng rose up. Duan Lingtian looked at Zisheng's dead body calmly as he conveniently took Zisheng's spatial ring. Puff! In the next moment, a purple flame with golden edges burned on Duan Lingtian's hands. He was ready to pour the hard liquor on Zisheng's body so that he would vanish completely from this world. Wait! At this moment, a cold, husky and old voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears. It was filled with concern. Duan Lingtian, don't burn just yet. Don't burn just yet. Oh, why, are you scared, old fellow? Duan Lingtian said calmly with a grin on his lips and a gleam in his eyes. Duan Lingtian, if you're willing to let me go, and let me live in your body temporarily, I'll pay you back in the future. As long as you have me, in the future, you'll definitely. Naturally, the voice came from what seemed to be the sole remnant of a martial emperor powerhouse in Zishang's body. It was Ghost Flame's voice. When he saw his host, Zishang, was killed, he was desperate to look for his next host. Otherwise, his sole remnant would vanish completely. However, he stopped suddenly before he could finish speaking. He then said in panic after pausing for a second, what are you doing? No. Unfortunately, it was Ghost Flame's fate that he could not finish what he was going to say. That was because the flame that was on Duan Lingtian's hand was poured onto Zishang's body at the moment Ghost Flame paused earlier. It ignited the hard liquor on Zishang's body. As Zishang drowned in the flame that rose rapidly, Ghost Flame could not speak at all, and he vanished from the world just like Zishang did. Zishang, Ghost Flame, die. Duan Lingtian maintained his cold expression from the beginning until the end. Naturally, he had heard Ghost Flame's voice loud and clear, but he ignored it completely. He had no idea what this Ghost Flame was, and he had no idea what kind of latent risk there might be in the future if he allowed Ghost Flame to attach himself to his body. Therefore, he did not dare to take the risk. The spirit fruit. Duan Lingtian performed blood ownership claim on Zishang's spatial ring after he snapped back to his senses. 969. It was just like what Duan Lingtian had speculated, only one out of the 3 spirit fruits that grew on the tricolor plant was left at the moment. Zishang had consumed 2 of the spirit fruits. Zishang should have only digested 1 spirit fruit's medicinal efficacy, otherwise, his cultivation base would have definitely ascended to the 2nd level void transformation if he had digested the 2nd spirit fruit's medicinal efficacy. When Duan Lingtian thought about this, he felt fortunate. To him, Zishang would undoubtedly be a tough opponent if he had broken through to the 2nd level void transformation. The reason he managed to defeat Zishang directly earlier was due to his power that suppressed Zishang in all aspects. Otherwise, he would not be able to do it so smoothly. If I didn't find out about the tricolor plant and made my way here, or if Zishang took the tricolor plant along with him when he took the 3 spirit fruits, I would definitely not be here in time to find him hiding here. Duan Lingtian could not help but reveal a hint of fear in his eyes when he thought about this. As soon as Zishang absorbed and digested the 3 spirit fruits, he would definitely break through his cultivation base to the 2nd level void transformation. I would definitely be defeated if I bumped into him at that time, and I probably would have to use the amulet to kill him. The more Duan Lingtian thought about it, the more fearful he became. He really felt he was fortunate, and it showed on his face. He felt fortunate that he did not have to use the amulet that his father only in name left him. Soon after, Duan Lingtian's attention was diverted. Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed when he looked at the spirit fruit in his hand that was so red that it was as though it was dripping blood. I'll eat this spirit fruit and wait until my cultivation base ascends. After that, I'll continue to figure out where the central area is. He looked at the corner on top of this secluded cave subconsciously as he thought about it. The inconspicuous dark cave in the corner was where Zishang was hiding in earlier. I'll cultivate here then. Duan Lingtian flew and entered the dark cave. He found the place empty, and it could easily contain his entire person. It's obvious that this tiny cave had just been opened up not long ago. Seems like it was done by Zishang, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself softly. He was relieved that Zishang was dead. Otherwise, he would suffer like he had a fishbone stuck in his throat. That ghost flame is just too strange. Luckily I killed him, so he's no longer a threat to me, Duan Lingtian said to himself softly as a gleam flashed in his eyes. All 20 Skywolf Fort's disciples died in my hands this time. I can consider this as earning back some interest from Skywolf Fort for myself. If the few Vice Fort Masters at Skywolf Fort know about all this, I'm afraid they'll be so angry that they'll vomit blood. Duan Tianlang was secretly glad when he thought about this. Back then, the people from Skywolf Fort almost killed him because they coveted the Devilseal tablet in his hands. It had caused an innocent person to die because of him. From that moment onward, his hatred towards Skywolf Fort was deep-rooted in his heart. In the future, he would definitely travel to Skywolf Fort in Ancient Desert City to teach them a good lesson when he achieved a boost in his ability. Moreover, he would definitely kill the 4 vice fort masters who led a team to chase after him. Meng Li, Ning Kan, Yu Kong, and Feng Wei. Duan Lingtian uttered the 4 Skywolf Fort vice fort masters' names loudly and clearly as his eyes gleamed coldly. A moment later, Duan Lingtian finally calmed down and popped the red spirit fruit into his mouth and swallowed it down into his stomach. The medicinal efficacy turned into a warm current and merged with his body immediately. Very quickly, the origin energy in his body began to churn. The overbearing medicinal efficacy from the rebirth pill that was hiding deep in his dantian was released and integrated completely with the origin energy. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, the roving dragon form. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was completely immersed in his cultivation. His cultivation base was ascending at a terrifying speed from the double boost of the spirit fruit's medicinal efficacy and the rebirth pill's overbearing medicinal efficacy. Bang, 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 single quote. That noise reverberated in one of the caves in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's outer ring while Duan Lingtian was deep in his cultivation. Loud bangs were heard over and over again. The entire cave was filled with gusts of strong wind, and sand and dust were flying everywhere. It was difficult for one to see what was happening in there. There were 2 silhouettes flashing past each other continuously in the cave. The battle seemed like it was stuck in a stalemate. An overbearing saber glow would form whenever one of them swung the saber in his hand with the might of splitting a mountain. Meanwhile, the other person had spirit weapon gloves on both of his hands. Whenever he punched, purple lightning would surround his fists and a thunderous sound would reverberate. Kung Bao, give me that profundity fragment, otherwise, I'll definitely kill you today. The muscular young man whose punches were like thunder had thick brows, big eyes, and his voice was loud and clear. Lei Jun, everyone can boast. If you're really capable, go ahead, kill me and take the profundity fragment in my hands. Although the profundity fragment I have is an 8th level monarch stage thunder profundity fragment, it suits you. However, from what I know, there are many senior officials in your Izumo sect who has comprehended the 9th level advanced thunder concept, right? You'll just benefit someone else even if you manage to obtain this profundity fragment. Why would you go all out for this? The young man who was shooting a domineering saber glow from his hands did not care when faced with Lei Jun's threat. Instead, he was advising Lei Jun. If Duan Lingtian was here, he would definitely recognize the person immediately. He had met this young man once, and they had traded before. He was Onika sect's disciple, Kung Bao. The situation at the moment was easy to understand. Kung Bao had obtained one of the profundity fragments at the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's outer ring, and it was the 8th level monarch stage thunder profundity fragment. It had piqued Lei Jun, the Izumo sect disciple's interest to fight for the fragment. It was difficult to determine who was winning since it was a draw between him and Lei Jun. As they battled for a while, Lei Jun seemed to notice that it was difficult for him to defeat Kung Bao. He then changed his tone to one that was calmer. Kung Bao, from what I know, none of the senior officials in your Anicha sect has comprehended the 9th level advanced thunder concept. The senior officials in your Anicha sect won't be able to use it even if you bring it back. Why don't we make a deal? As long as you're willing to give me this 8th level monarch stage thunder profundity fragment, I'll agree to your condition as long as it's something our Izumo sect is capable of doing. Lei Jun's tone became desperate as he reached the end of his sentence since he was desperate to obtain the profundity fragment in Kung Bao's hands. Unless you can trade a profundity fragment that can help our Anicha sect's senior officials, otherwise, don't even think about taking the thunder profundity fragment from me. Kung Bao said calmly. What kind of joke is that? The Anicha sect that he was in and the Izumo sect that Lei Jun was from had always been incompatible like fire and water all these years. If he was to give up the thunder profundity fragment that he had, another monarch powerhouse would undoubtedly be born in Izumo sect. At that time, Izumo sect would beat Anicha sect. Therefore, although none of them could use the thunder profundity fragment at the moment, it was impossible for him to give it up to the people from Izumo sect. Lei Jun wore a solemn expression on his face when he heard what Kung Bao said. He moved suddenly and retreated quickly. Kung Bao did not chase after him when he saw Lei Jun retreating. Instead, he stood where he was and looked at Lei Jun calmly. Kung Bao, I can promise you this, Lei Jun took a deep breath and promised, from this moment onward, you and I will collaborate to look and fight for the second profundity fragment. A smile appeared on Kung Bao's face when he heard that. Lei Jun was the second most powerful person among the current Izumo sect's disciples. His ability was not any lesser than Kung Bao's. He would definitely be able to overcome all obstacles to obtain the profundity fragment that Anicha's sect needed if he collaborated with Lei Jun. From this moment onward, apart from looking and fighting for other profundity fragments in the outer ring, we also have to figure out the directions to the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's central area and head over there, said Peng Bao. After that, the small team that Peng Bao and Lei Jun established temporarily began to move swiftly at the outer ring. Unfortunately, their dream to look for the other 4 profundity fragments in the outer ring could not be realized. The 4 profundity fragments had found masters of their own. When Peng Bao and Lei Jun were looking for the directions to the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's central area, a group of survivors in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure was looking for the fragments as well. The Martial Emperor's secret treasure's central area was the place where the Martial Emperor, who had left this secret treasure behind, ended his life. According to the Martial Emperor's message, his body should be located there. Apart from the ample treasures that might be there, the 3 profundity fragments in the Martial Emperor's body alone were sufficient to drive someone crazy to look for them. Those were Emperor Stage Profundity Fragment and 2 Monarch Stage Profundity Fragments. While they were looking for the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's central area and heading there, Duan Lingtian remained immersed in his cultivation. He seemed to have forgotten about time. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, the roving dragon form. The origin energy in his body was circulating rapidly to boost his cultivation base quickly. It was unknown how long had passed when Duan Lingtian finally opened his eyes that gleamed in the dark. Almost there, Duan Lingtian woke up when the rebirth pill's overbearing medicinal efficacy returned to his dantian, and he did not continue to cultivate. Meanwhile, he had exhausted the red spirit fruit's medicinal efficacy completely. His cultivation base had successfully broken through to the 3rd level void transformation, and he had reached the 4th level void transformations plateau and it was still unstable. Wind. Suddenly, a rapid wind whistling noise arose in the tiny, dark cave. Soon, the noise became louder and louder. 3rd level advanced wind concept, I've finally comprehended it. At that moment when Duan Lingtian was mumbling to himself, he flew out of the tiny, dark cave as if he had transformed into a gust of wind. He then appeared in the spacious cave outside that was as bright as day. I should continue to look for the directions to the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's central area, Duan Lingtian muttered. Once he finished speaking, he was nowhere to be seen. 970. Duan Lingtian had broken through his cultivation base and comprehended the 3rd level advanced wind concept, and he rushed out like lightning. The heaven and earth phenomenon above his head followed him like his shadow. When the khaki energy rumbled below Duan Lingtian's feet, it was as though he resonated with the ground. He traveled across a few caves after he stepped out. Apart from the bolts of rampant purple lightning rumbling around the khaki energy, there were waves of green energy following it. Moreover, there was a faint layer of energy on his body that acted as a pathfinder as Duan Lingtian was rushing. Upon closer inspection, it was a wave of sword-shaped energy. Meanwhile, ancient horned dragon silhouettes flew above his head when he was rushing. He looked menacing. Due to the rapid speed, it was difficult for one to see how many ancient horned dragon silhouettes were there. As soon as Duan Lingtian halted his movement, the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head would be crystal clear. There were a total of 1,150 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. A 3rd level void transformation with an origin energy boost that was as powerful as the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons. The 3rd level advanced wind concept also had the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons. The combination of the 3 remaining types of 9th level void interpretation concepts was as powerful the strength of 300 ancient horned dragons. Altogether, it had the strength of 1,100 ancient horned dragons. The extra 50 ancient horned dragons' strength came from Duan Lingtian's resonation with the earth energy with the help from earth concept and the earth. It was half the power of the earth concept. Duan Lingtian was driven by the strength of the 1,150 ancient horned dragons, and he was as fast as wind and thunder. Many martial artists would not be able to catch up with his speed due to how fast he was. It was unknown how long had passed when Duan Lingtian stopped moving, and he did not look too good. Chen Wei. Duan Lingtian revealed a cold gleam in his eyes that seemed as though he was going to devour the next person he saw alive when he saw the body lying on the ground. It was Chen Wei, a person that he knew. He had already known Chen Wei before he joined 5 Element sect. Although their first meeting ended on an unpleasant note, it was actually caused by Chen Wei being deceived by his birth brother. Duan Lingtian actually liked Chen Wei as a person. Before entering the martial emperor's secret treasure, Chen Wei was an active person. However, he was now just a cold body. Moreover, it was obvious that he had been dead for many days. Bang! Duan Lingtian was solemn as he lifted his foot and stomped on the ground. Rumble, rumble, comma. All of a sudden, a ferocious crack appeared on the ground where Duan Lingtian stomped on. It only stopped cracking when it spread to Chen Wei's body, causing Chen Wei's body to fall. As Duan Lingtian lifted his arms, the origin energy merged with earth energy and rushed to the side of the cave wall. The rocks began to chip from above and gravels began to fall. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian lifted his arms once again as he controlled the chips and gravels with his energy to fill the gaps for Chen Wei's burial. He wanted Chen Wei to be buried under the ground in peace. Rest in peace, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself with his head lowered as he looked at the cracks that were spread all over the place. What's he doing? I happened to see it because I came earlier. He seems to be burying a person's body. It should be a brother of the same sect that he's close with. Comma. It was unknown when it happened, but the scene Duan Lingtian created had attracted many to watch. They were standing far away and talking among themselves. Duan Lingtian frowned as he was getting ready to leave. It's Duan Lingtian. Two people entered the cave to watch, and they could not help but exclaim when they saw Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian looked over when he heard the voice. He recognized the duo at first glance. They were the two monk disciples from the Empyrean Temple. Although he did not know the duo, he had some impressions of them. Duan Lingtian nodded at them. He thought it was fate that they managed to meet each other here since they came from the same entrance. He was ready to leave again after he greeted and nodded at the duo. However, before he could move, he realized that he had been surrounded by three people who approached him like three bolts of lightning. As the three surrounded him, their eyes gleamed as they stared at him with greed written all over their faces. They were looking at him as though he was some precious treasure. You're Duan Lingtian, the most powerful person among the current five-element sect on the eastern side of the northern desert. I heard that you obtained a profundity fragment. As the three of them surrounded Duan Lingtian, they took turns to speak as their breaths quickened. Oh, how can I forget? Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian, I heard from someone that he obtained a profundity fragment earlier. I heard about that too. Duan Lingtian, the most powerful person among the current five-element sect's disciples. He just obtained a profundity fragment not too long ago. Oh, so he's that Duan Lingtian. Comma. Apart from the two Empyrean Temple's monk disciples who had a faint change of expression, the others were staring at Duan Lingtian menacingly. They could not wait to kill him right away and take the profundity fragment from him. Duan Lingtian frowned when he heard the discussion around him. He immediately looked at the two monk disciples from the Empyrean Temple. Suddenly, the two Empyrean Temple monk disciples' expressions changed dramatically and spoke immediately in panic as they shook their heads. Duan Lingtian, I know nothing about you obtaining the profundity fragment. That's right. If we knew you obtained the profundity fragment and spread the news, we definitely wouldn't have exposed your identity earlier. The two Empyrean Temple's monk disciples seemed to be a little panicked when they spoke. They had witnessed Duan Lingtian's ability previously. As long as Duan Lingtian was willing, one blow was all that he needed to kill the both of them instantly. Duan Lingtian's frown grew deeper. He did not blame the two Empyrean Temple's monk disciples for exposing his identity, rather, he was curious how the others knew he had obtained a profundity fragment. Most importantly, these people knew his name as well as his background despite the fact that they had never seen him before. When I obtained that 7th level Monarch Stage Earth profundity fragment, I've taken special care to use spiritual energy to probe my surroundings. Apart from myself, there was definitely no other living human that knew about me obtaining the profundity fragment. Duan Lingtian recalled the scene when he obtained the 7th level Monarch Stage Earth profundity fragment, and he was absolutely certain of that. There was definitely no other living person who knew he had obtained the profundity fragment. It meant that there was only one possibility. Someone intentionally framed me in an attempt to make me the common enemy among the group of young people who entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. That person wants me dead. Duan Lingtian figured it out immediately after he gave it some thought. A layer of red appeared in his eyes as soon as he figured it out. He could not hold back the rage that was rising in him at this moment. The thing that he wanted to do most at this very moment was to find the person who started the rumor and kill him. Although he was not concerned about the consequences of the rumor, he was extremely irritated that person framed him while hiding in the dark. Apart from the two Empyrean Temple's monk disciples who were so scared that they were trembling while standing far away, Duan Lingtian realized that another 4 people had come up to him and surrounded him, excluding the 3 people who surrounded him earlier. There was a total of 7 of them surrounding him. At this moment, Duan Lingtian figured out the situation. Apart from the 3 people who were together in the beginning, the other 4 were separated into 2 small teams. There were 2 of them in each small team. With that said, the 7 of them came from 3 different forces. There was a total of 6 forces that came from entrance number 2. Apart from the 20 Skywolf Fort disciples who died in his hands, although he did not know the remaining people from the 5 forces, he had a rough idea of who they were. However, he did not have any impression of the 7 people before him. Are all of you the disciples from Anicha sect, Azumo sect, and North Nether sect? Duan Lingtian asked with his deep voice and focused his vision as he faced the 7 young powerhouses whose origin energies were rising as their concepts followed closely. They were all poised to attack. That's right. Why are you afraid? When they heard what Duan Lingtian said, a couple of young powerhouses surrounding him wore a prideful smile on their faces. As disciples from second-rate forces, they had a sense of superiority when they encountered disciples from third-rate forces such as 5-element sect. It seems like there really are 2 entrances in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. People from the Anicha sect, Azumo sect and North Nether sect all came from entrance number 1 while the others and I came from entrance number 2. Until now, I've yet to meet anyone who came from the 3rd entrance. Duan Lingtian thought to himself and secretly confirmed the fact. Although Duan Lingtian was surrounded by the 7 of them, he was not afraid at all. He asked slowly, which one of you are Anicha sect's disciples? At this moment, Duan Lingtian's eyes were calm and his face was relaxed. His expression would not change even if Mountain Tai was to collapse before him. We're Anicha sect's disciples, a young man and lady responded calmly after Duan Lingtian spoke. The young man wore a cold expression as he stared at Duan Lingtian greedily. Meanwhile, the young lady had a calm expression, and nobody could tell if she was happy or angry. For the sake of me being acquainted with Peng Bao, I'll advise you to retreat. Duan Lingtian glanced at the 2 Anicha sect's disciples calmly. His tone was peaceful without any emotions. Peng Bao was the Anicha sect's disciple that he met earlier. He had a tremendous ability with a 3rd-level void transformation cultivation base. When the both of them met, all he did was trade with Peng Bao since it was beneficial to both parties. They only met once, but he liked Peng Bao's straightforward character. When he found out the duo before him were Anicha sect's disciples, he was willing to let them live when he recalled Peng Bao. Otherwise, he would definitely not waste his breath on them. The Anicha sect, female disciple who had a calm face since the beginning could not help but said out loud, "You know senior brother Peng Bao?" "Yes, I know him." Duan Lingtian nodded. The Anicha sect's female disciple heard what he said and retreated after she nodded. "Senior brother Peng Bao saved my life. Since you're his friend, I won't give you a difficult time today." HMPH. So what if you know senior brother Peng Bao? I must take the profundity fragment from you. However, the Anicha sect's male disciple did not appreciate Duan Lingtian's mercy. 971. Duan Lingtian seemed like he did not hear what the male disciple from Anicha sect said. He gazed at the other 6 who were surrounding him and said, "The 6 of you, just come at me together." When the 6 young powerhouses from second-rate forces heard what Duan Lingtian said and saw the disregard on his face, their faces changed dramatically and all of them were completely enraged by it. A disciple from a third-rate force challenging the 6 of them from second-rate forces. Provocation. Direct provocation. Since you wish to die, we'll help you with it. We'll let you know, disciples from third-rate forces like you are similar to ants in the eyes of disciples from second-rate forces like us. It's as easy as killing chickens or cutting grass for us to kill you. 6 of the disciples from second-rate forces attacked simultaneously as they struck at Duan Lingtian. They fully exerted their origin energies, and their concepts followed like shadows as they released the spirit weapons in their hands and gave it their best shot. They charged toward Duan Lingtian with great momentum. Each of them had several hundreds of ancient horned dragon silhouettes at the space above them as they charged toward Duan Lingtian who was surrounded in the middle. More than 3,000 ancient horned dragon silhouettes formed a siege and lunged toward Duan Lingtian's position with their fangs and claws bared. Boom, 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 The full force from the 6 second-rate Foss's disciples caused the air to compress rapidly, and a series of air explosion that sounded as loud as exploding mines resounded. When the air explosion sounded, jets of airwaves rolled out in all directions and turned into gusts of strong wind. Everyone's robes billowed and fluttering sounds could be heard. Kill. The spirit weapons in the hands of the 6 disciples from second-rate forces seemed to turn into death scythes at that moment as they headed for Duan Lingtian, trying to reap his life. The female Anicha sect's disciple looked on calmly from the side. In her opinion, it was impossible for the purple-clad young man, Duan Lingtian, to survive the attacks of the 6 young powerhouses from the second-rate forces. However, when her gaze inadvertently landed on the other 2 bystanders, she realized they were looking sympathetically at the 6 young powerhouses from the second-rate forces that were with her. Her heart immediately sank, and she had an ominous premonition. Was the purple-clad young man strong enough to deal with the 6 of them? She felt a little absurd on second thought. A disciple from a third-rate force, even if he was the number 1 among the youths, it was still impossible to fight 6 young powerhouses who were not inferior to her. Nevertheless, she was stunned in the very next moment. Her face turned red as if her throat was being choked. Her eyes were wide as she stared at the scene before her, incredulity and amazement filled her eyes. Oh, God, what did she just see? Under the siege of the 6 young powerhouses as strong as him, the purple-clad young man casually stepped upward. A sword that exuded a devastating aura then appeared in his hands. This is definitely not a grade 2 spirit sword. A thought instantly appeared in her subconscious mind. What surprised her the most was the subsequent move from the purple-clad young man. He exerted his origin energy that continued transforming into a vast amount of khaki energy entwined with bolts of purple lightning along with gusts of green wind that were solidifying. Apart from that, there was a swift and piercing aura on the purple-clad young man. Sword concept. The female Anicha sect disciple was very familiar with it since she was a martial artist who had comprehended the sword concept. He has comprehended so many concepts. All of them seem to be at a high level too. Within a few breaths' time, the female Anicha sect's disciple only had time to figure out this much. In the next moment, she witnessed an unforgettable scene. It was a scene that haunted her for the rest of her life and made her feel grateful for the choice she made today. The female Anicha sect's disciple clearly saw as the purple-clad young man raised his hand and swung his sword. A frightening sword chi turned around as fast as a flash of lightning, and it lasted very briefly. Shortly after, all the 6 young powerhouses, who were charging toward him with great momentum, were slashed at their waists into 2 halves. Their incomplete corpses smashed together due to inertia. Everything happened in a blink of an eye, all 6 of them died without time for any one of them to even scream. The female Anicha sect's disciple completely froze. She only realized what had happened after a while. Her face was filled with horror as she muttered, "Senior brother Peng Bao, I owe you my life once again." She knew if she did not back down when the purple-clad young man mentioned Peng Bao, there would have been more than 6 deaths. She would not have been able to stay alive. Boom, 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 pieces of incomplete corpses fell on the ground and quickly dyed the ground red like a river of blood, and it was dreadful. The 2 Empyrean Temple's disciples were shocked and pale as their bodies trembled. Although they had expected the scene before them would happen, they still could not help but feel frightened when they witnessed it. The 6 young powerhouses might be disciples from second-rate forces, but to them, the strength of Duan Lingtian from 5-element sect had surpassed ordinary disciples from second-rate forces. They were no match for Duan Lingtian's strength unless they were the best among the younger generation from the second-rate forces. As for the best among the younger generation from second-rate forces, although they had never seen any, they could still identify that the 6 people who attacked Duan Lingtian were not at that level. The 6 of them would have been at most the better ones among the youths from the second-rate forces. However, Duan Lingtian's ability to instantly kill 6 first-level void transformation disciples from second-rate forces with one move had struck fear into their hearts. Duan Lingtian's strength seems to have increased. They came to the same conclusion as they looked at each other. The depths of their eyes were filled with a fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. "You've overestimated yourselves." As Duan Lingtian's coolly glanced at 6 of the incomplete corpses on the ground, a hint of coldness hung on the corner of his mouth. His spiritual energy had identified the level of cultivation of the 6 of them. They were all first-level void transformation martial artists who were nothing before him. Waves of origin energy rolled out as Duan Lingtian raised his arms. He kept the grade 2 spirit weapons and spatial rings that belonged to the 6 of them. These were the trophies and fruits of his labor. Then, Duan Lingtian casually glanced at that female Anicha sect's disciple and 2 of the Empyrean Temple's monk disciples. Duan Ling Tian, we won't tell anyone that you've acquired a profundity fragment, the two Empyrean Temple's monk disciples hurriedly said when they saw Duan Ling Tian's gaze. They bit their fingers and quickly made an oath with their blood on the 99 heavenly tribulation. Duan Ling Tian was speechless when he saw that. When did he ask them to make an oath? He knew in his heart that the news of him acquiring a profundity fragment was intentionally leaked. It was safe to assume that most of the young powerhouses in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure already knew about it. Apart from those uninformed, everyone else must have known. No matter who it is, those who hit below the belt must be repaid with my endless anger. Duan Ling Tian's eyes turned cold as the anger in his heart skyrocketed. Under the watchful gazes of both of the Empyrean Temple's monk disciples and the female Anicha sect's disciple, Duan Ling Tian moved and disappeared before their eyes in just a second as if he had vanished into thin air. Only then did the three of them heave a sigh of relief. In front of Duan Ling Tian, they felt oppressed from the bottom of their hearts. He was a chilling god of slaughter. When they looked at the 6 incomplete corpses before them, their faces paled again, and a hint of fear that came from the bottom of their hearts shone in their eyes. The female Anicha sect's disciple looked at the 2 Empyrean Temple's monk disciples and asked calmly, "Both of you knew that he was so strong?" "Of course. He killed 48 young disciples from third-rate forces with only 2 swords when he entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. He's a freak. I have to say, you made the right choice, otherwise, you would have ended up like them," said the 2 Empyrean Temple's monk disciples as their gazes landed on the remains stacked in a river of blood in front of them and involuntarily shuddered again. Killed 48 young disciples from third-rate forces with 2 swords. The female Anicha sect's disciple could not help but narrow her eyes. Those who were sent into the Martial Emperor's secret treasure would have been the stronger ones among the younger generation of third-rate Foss's disciples, they would not be weak. However, to kill 48 young disciples from third-rate forces with merely 2 swords, she knew she would not be able to achieve that with her strength. Even if she was able to kill them all, she would not be able to do it so simply and swiftly. Duan Ling Tian, senior brother Peng Bao, what kind of freak did you meet? A bitter smile hung on the corner of the female Anicha sect's disciple's mouth. If Duan Ling Tian did not mention Peng Bao in a timely manner, and she did not withdraw from the battle because Peng Bao had saved her life before, she would have been more than dead. Naturally, Duan Ling Tian did not have the time to figure out the Empyrean Temple's monk disciples and the female Anicha sect's disciples' state of mind. He continued to search for the directions to the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Obviously, he was also trying to deduce who was the person that framed him. Knows my name and my background, the person who framed me must have been from one of the 6 major forces that entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure with me. 19 disciples from Skywolf Fort was killed by me as soon as we entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Could it be Zishang who spread the news? Duan Ling Tian furrowed his brows as the thought arose. In his opinion, this was the most viable possibility. Although he had killed Zishang, who knew if Zishang had already framed him by spreading the news of him possessing a profundity fragment before that? No, very soon, Duan Ling Tian suddenly thought of something and shook his head. Rate translation quality, 972. The soul remnant that was hidden in Zishang's body is most likely from the Devilseal tablet. After all, he did own a Devilseal tablet fragment. More importantly, the soul remnant that was hidden in Zishang's body seems to be a Martial Emperor powerhouse who recognized the Devilseal tablet. It's possible that he knew the background of the Devilseal tablet. Then, he should know the value of the Devilseal tablet. This also means Zishang wouldn't have framed me. Otherwise, if I'm killed, the Devilseal tablet will fall into other people's hands. Duan Ling Tian thought a lot in just a few minutes. First, he was certain Zishang knew the value of the Devilseal tablet. Back when he was hunted by the Skywolf Fort's 4 Vice Fort Masters, it was led by Zishang with the Devilseal tablet. It could be that Zishang wanted Skywolf Fort to obtain the Devilseal tablet first before he steals it back with other methods. He had aid from a soul remnant that seems to be a Martial Emperor powerhouse. It wouldn't be difficult to obtain strength that surpasses Skywolf Fort in the future. However, it's different in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Once he spreads the news that I have a profundity fragment, he wouldn't be able to find out who killed me, let alone retrieving the Devilseal tablet from the person who killed me. With this line of thought, Duan Ling Tian confirmed that the person who framed him was not Zishang. Since Zishang was interested in his Devilseal tablet, he would not do such a stupid thing. But if not Zishang, then who is it? Duan Ling Tian frowned as he flew. he still could not figure out who was trying to frame him. Could it be the 2 disciples from Sun Moon sect? Soon, Duan Lingtian thought of the remaining Sun Moon sect's disciples. They had the largest motive since the other 18 Sun Moon sect's disciples died in his hands. If the 2 of them wanted revenge, then they would have the motive. Apart from them, the people from Emotion Severing sect would also have a motive. When he first entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, he had killed 19 disciples from Skywolf Fort, 17 disciples from Sun Moon sect, and 12 disciples from Emotion Severing sect. It's possible that among the remaining Emotion Severing sect's disciples, there are a few who wish to avenge the dead Emotion Severing sect's disciples, Duan Lingtian murmured. Shortly after, Duan Lingtian let out a bitter smile. There's also the Blade sect's disciple, Lian Shang. His arm was severed by Tian Wu before entering the Martial Emperor's secret treasure because of me. Although he reattached his arm, I'm pretty sure he hates me. Duan Lingtian thought as he continued to search for possible suspects. As he analyzed, he realized that no matter if it was the Blade sect's disciple, Empyrean Temple's disciples or even 5 Element sect's disciples, all of them seemed to have the possibility of framing him. This is a headache. Duan Lingtian shook his head and stopped thinking. However, his eyes revealed a harsh and cold light. It doesn't matter who it is. They dared to frame me, I'll kill you and let you die horribly once I catch you. Duan Lingtian moved rapidly, as fast as the wind, as he traveled across caves. Along Duan Lingtian's journey, he heard chatters about him from a lot of the surviving young powerhouses. They were discussing the issue of the profundity fragment. After half a month's time, Duan Lingtian finally confirmed the directions to the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure and headed there. Finally confirmed the direction, that Martial Emperor Powerhouse's palace is there. Duan Lingtian flew toward the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. His speed was at the maximum, all that was left to be seen by young powerhouses along the way was a purple lightning-like figure. That person is moving so fast. Yes, I couldn't catch up with his trail at all. Such a speed, he must at least be at the 4th level void transformation or above. The young powerhouses along the way could not help but sigh and admit defeat when they saw the flashing purple figure. As Duan Lingtian headed toward the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, a lot of young powerhouses scattered about the Martial Emperor's secret treasure had also figured out the directions to the central area and were traveling there. Brother Lingtian obtained a profundity fragment. 2 figures were rapidly moving toward the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. One of them was surprised by the talks they had heard along the way. Peng Bao, you know that Duan Lingtian. The other person was Lei Jun, he was the 2nd strongest powerhouse of the younger generation from Azumo sect. The former figure was Peng Bao, the 2nd strongest powerhouse of the younger generation from Anicha sect. I know him, he can be considered a friend, but I did not realize he has the ability to obtain a profundity fragment. Peng Bao nodded, surprise showed on his face when he spoke. He did not think that the young man he had seen once had such a strength. As someone who had obtained a profundity fragment at the outer side of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, he clearly knew that one needed sufficient strength and luck to obtain a profundity fragment. The puppets guarding the profundity fragment was already troublesome enough. Apart from the puppets, the boxes that contained the profundity fragment would release an extremely penetrating sound to attract people nearby. If one could not overpower those who were attracted, the profundity fragment would have to be given away. Hence, to obtain a profundity fragment, luck was secondary, and strength was the most important factor. If I meet him, I'll snatch the profundity fragment from his hands, you won't interfere, will you? Lei Jun's eyes flashed as he asked quietly. If I meet him, I'll ask him which type of profundity fragment he has. If it's the one Anicha's sect needs, I'll try to exchange my profundity fragment with his, Peng Bao said calmly. He did not answer Lei Jun. Lei Jun's eyes brightened when he heard his words. Peng Bao's profundity fragment was the one he desperately needs, but he could not obtain it from Peng Bao. If it fell into the 5 Element sect's disciples' hands who was from a third-rate force, it would be easily snatched by him, right? A young disciple from a third-rate force, even if he was the strongest person among the younger generation of the third-rate forces, he would not be better than the 2nd strongest person from Azumo sect, a second-rate force. Lei Jun was very confident of his strength. Now, I hope the profundity fragment in Duan Lingtian's hands is the one Anicha sect needs, even if it's not, I'll still snatch the profundity fragment from his hands. Lei Jun mumbled as a cold light gleamed in his eyes. An ant from a third-rate force isn't qualified to own a profundity fragment. Show. Kung Bao and Lei Jun moved very fast as they headed toward the central area of the martial emperor's secret treasure. At the same time, there were also a lot of other people who were traveling to the central area. Show. A red-hot figure surrounded by a burning aura flashed by several caves in a blink of an eye. The speed was so fast that several young powerhouses along the way felt ashamed. Big Brother Duan should also be on his way to the central area, right? The figure that flashed by was a red-clad girl. She was like an elf dancing in the fire when she flew, drop-dead gorgeous and alluring. She looked around 20. There was a bit of expectation between her eyebrows as she hurriedly traveled. In her mind, the figure of a purple-clad young man appeared. It made her blushed, and it looked ravishing. Show. On the other side of the martial emperor's secret treasure, two shadows flew side by side at an extremely high speed. There was a young man in red and a young man in blue who looked identical. It was obvious that they were twins. However, they had entirely different expressions on their faces. The red-clad youth was expressive with constantly changing expressions, whereas the blue-clad young man's face was extremely cold and remained the same from the beginning. Duan Lingtian has obtained a profundity fragment. There was a hint of surprise on the red-clad young man's face. When you look at it, he's as lucky as us. The blue-clad young man raised his eyebrows but stayed silent. The profound assimilation formation we found in the martial emperor's secret treasure is way more powerful than the one we experienced in the sect. Judging from how our concepts have improved, you can tell the profound assimilation formation has a lot of concept fragments that are of better grades, the red-clad young man exclaimed. This pair of twins was the Nangong twins from Five Element sect. The blue-clad young man with a stony face was Nangong Chen, and the red-clad young man who looked fascinated was Nangong Yi. The brothers were polar opposites, one was quiet and the other was lively. Ever since they entered the martial emperor's secret treasure, they had each acquired a grade 1 spirit weapon in addition to entering an automatically activated profound assimilation formation. They were inside the profound assimilation formation for 3 hours, and their concepts had improved tremendously. The improvement compared to the improvement they experienced in the profound assimilation formation in Five Element sect was like comparing heaven and earth. Five Element sect's profound assimilation formation was nothing before the profound assimilation formation in the martial emperor's secret treasure. Too bad the profound assimilation formation can only be activated once, otherwise, we could have comprehended the 9th level advanced concept if we're allowed to enter again, Nangong Yi sighed and said with pity all over his face. Greedy, Nangong Chen said coolly. You don't want to? Nangong Yi glanced at Nangong Chen scornfully. Nevertheless, our encounter is better than Duan Lingtian. Although he obtained a profundity fragment, he would have to hand it over to the sect. Hey, very hard to stay alive, Nangong Chen said a few words. He cherished his words as though it was gold. Yes, we did not expect those who entered from the other entrance of the martial emperor's secret treasure or from second-rate forces. Nangong Yi nodded with an apprehensive face. 973 Chapter 974, The Meeting. Since they had heard about Duan Lingtian obtaining a profundity fragment, the young powerhouses from the second-rate forces had to have also heard of it. Duan Lingtian had to be everyone's target. It was not difficult to guess. Although Duan Lingtian is strong, I'm afraid he's no match for the top young powerhouses from second-rate forces. Nangong Yi took a deep breath. His tone was filled with fear for the several few top young powerhouses from second-rate forces. With his current strength, he could easily take on the average young powerhouses from second-rate forces. However, he had no confidence to win against top young powerhouses from second-rate forces. Apart from having a martial emperor powerhouse in their sects, second-rate forces were second-rate forces because the young powerhouses' cultivations were far better than the cultivation by third-rate forces like Five Element sect. For once, Nangong Chen nodded and agreed with Nangong Yi. Meanwhile, all around the martial emperor's secret treasure, more and more people had figured out the directions to the central area and were traveling there. On his way to the central area of the martial emperor's secret treasure, Duan Lingtian, who was hurriedly traveling, had just flown through a cave and saw 3 extremely familiar figures appearing in the distance. The 3 of them were flying in the same direction as he was. They were obviously heading toward the central area of the martial emperor's secret treasure. Daniu, Su Li, Big Brother Zhang. Duan Lingtian's speed was as fast as lightning. He caught up like a ghost. He smiled and said hello when he arrived at their side. The 3 of them were none other than Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang. Duan Lingtian did not expect to meet them here, let alone to see the 3 of them together. Duan Ling Tian, brother Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian's appearance was a huge surprise for Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang. Seeing Duan Ling Tian again brought excitement to their eyes. Duan Ling Tian, good for you, I thought you're already killed by the hands of the others. Huang Daniu said in jest. Duan Ling Tian, did you really obtain a profundity fragment? Su Li looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked with a piercing gaze. Zhang Shouyang also looked at Duan Ling Tian. If I say no, will all of you believe it? Having heard Su Li's question, Duan Ling Tian knew the three of them must have heard about the rumor that he had obtained a profundity fragment. He could not help but smile bitterly. Although he had obtained a profundity fragment, that was something no other living person knew. As for the widespread rumor, it was just a setup. No, having heard Duan Ling Tian's respond, not only Su Li and Zhang Shouyang, even Huang Daniu was surprised. Someone's trying to set me up. There was a flash in Duan Ling Tian's eyes, a glimmer of coldness flashed past as though waiting for a chance to devour someone. I still don't know who it is, but one thing's for sure, that person must have entered from entrance No. 2 with us. I'll surely kill them once I find out who it is, Huang Daniu threw a punch and said in anger. His face sank when he heard what Duan Ling Tian said. By framing you like this, he obviously wants to get you killed, that person must hold a grudge against you. Could it be the two remaining disciples of Sun Moon sect? Su Li speculated. It could also be Lian Shang. There was a flash in Zhang Shouyang's eyes, who stood at the side. He quietly said, in Blade sect, everyone knows Lian Shang always holds grudges and seeks revenge. He certainly wouldn't give up so easily after such a big loss to brother Ling Tian. I've thought about these people that you all mentioned. I did consider the emotion-severing sect's disciples. After all of them have the motive. The one who framed me doesn't necessarily have to hold a grudge against me. It may be pure jealousy, and they just don't want me to survive this expedition in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, Duan Ling Tian said slowly and shared his deduction. Huang Daniu and the rest immediately fell silent. That person is really insidious. With one phrase, he put you in danger. Now, those young powerhouses from second-rate forces must be looking for you, Huang Daniu said with an alarmed expression. Second-rate forces? Duan Ling Tian lifted his eyebrows when he heard what Huang Daniu said. None of the disciples of second-rate forces he had met and battled was a match for him. All of them died in his hands. Even if it's that Peng Bao from Anicha sect, with my current strength, it shouldn't be hard to win him. Duan Ling Tian unconsciously thought of Peng Bao, whom he had met once previously. At that time, his spiritual energy discovered Peng Bao was a third-level void transformation martial artist. He did not have much confidence in winning a battle against Peng Bao then, but things have changed. Unless Peng Bao had a fortuitous encounter, he would not be a match for Duan Ling Tian. The four of them traveled to the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure together. Along the way, Huang Daniu asked curiously, Duan Ling Tian, did you gain anything else along the way? It's not too bad. I obtained a 9th-level Earth concept fragment and a spirit fruit, Duan Ling Tian said as he smiled. He did not mention the incident with the 7th-level Monarch Stage Earth profundity fragment. Otherwise, he would be admitting the rumor was true. Then, that person would not be framing him but would have spoken the truth instead. That was not something he was willing to see. What about all of you? After Duan Ling Tian told them about his acquisition, he looked at Huang Daniu and the other two others and asked, how did the three of you meet? I met Su Li first, Huang Daniu said. Yes, Su Li nodded. After that, Daniu and I met Big Brother Zhang together, and we decided to travel together. We did acquire some things. So far, we managed to collect all the 9th-level concept fragments that are usable for the three of us. Looks like it's a fruitful trip for the three of you, Duan Ling Tian said with a smile. Duan Ling Tian, you don't know, apart from those, we encountered a profundity fragment. It was an 8th-level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment. Huang Daniu said and sighed at the same time. Hints of regret filled his face. 8th-level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment. Duan Ling Tian was shocked when he heard Huang Daniu's statement. Although he had a Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment, it was just a 3rd-level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment. It was incomparable to an 8th-level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment. You all didn't get it. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed when he saw Huang Daniu's sigh. He asked curiously, since you all didn't manage to obtain it, this means the person who obtained that profundity fragment is stronger. But why did he let you go? Isn't he worried that you all will spread the news that he had obtained a profundity fragment? He wanted to kill us, but we narrowly escaped. Besides, he doesn't seem to care about us spreading the news that he got a profundity fragment, Zhang Shouyang said with a bitter smile. What does that mean? Duan Lingtian was stunned, his face filled with questions. In his opinion, since the person tried to kill Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang, that means he was worried the three of them would spread the news that he had obtained a profundity fragment. However, why did Zhang Shouyang say he did not care? Was that not contradictory? Shortly after, Duan Lingtian finally understood after listening to Su Li's explanation. What you mean is, he just stomped his feet, and several disciples from Azumo sect and Anicha sect was killed. Duan Lingtian could not help but inhale sharply. Based on Su Li and the others' explanation, he gathered that the several Azumo sect and Anicha sect's disciples were the weakest among the disciples of second-rate forces that entered the martial emperor's secret treasure. However, that black-clad young man was able to kill them with just a stomp of his feet and almost killed Su Li and the rest. He felt shocked from the bottom of his heart. Huang Daniu's face was filled with fear as he said, that person's strength should be at least at the second or third level void transformation. More importantly, he comprehended the earth concept and can draw support from earth energy. According to what you've said, he's at least a third level void transformation martial artist. Additionally, the earth concept he has comprehended would be at least at the third level advanced or higher, Duan Lingtian guessed as he referred to the experience in the rebirth martial emperor's memories. Forget it, don't mention him, makes me feel unlucky. Huang Daniu shook his head. Duan Lingtian, the news of you obtaining a profundity fragment has spread, maybe you should stay away from the central area of the martial emperor's secret treasure. That's right, Duan Lingtian, what you should do now is protect yourself. Su Li agreed. Brother Lingtian, I think you shouldn't go too. Once you're there, human greed will make you an obvious target for everyone, Zhang Shouyang added. Duan Lingtian's heart warmed after listening to the concerns of the three of them. Just when he wanted to say something, Heng, you're Duan Lingtian. A cold hump sounded from the opening of a cave in front of them, and it spread clearly into Duan Lingtian's ears. Following that, Duan Lingtian saw a black figure appeared on the path they were headed toward. It was a black-clad young man with an indifferent expression. His eyes seemed dull, but in fact, it hid a murderous intent and gave out an invisible sense of oppression. Duan Lingtian raised his eyebrows and extended his spiritual energy. He intended to identify his opponent's cultivation. It's you. At that moment, the screams of Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang shocked Duan Lingtian. His spiritual energy almost collapsed, and his heart was filled with curiosity. Did they know the black-clad young man? Duan Lingtian, he's the person we previously mentioned, but we didn't expect him to be nearby and to be eavesdropping on our conversation. Su Li answered the question in Duan Lingtian's mind using voice transmission. Then, that 8th level monarch stage wind profundity fragment is with him. Having heard what Su Li said, Duan Lingtian stared at the black-clad young man who was blocking their way with a piercing gaze. His killing intent showed in the depth of his eyes. 974 Chapter 975, The Strength of the Black-Clad Young Man. As Duan Lingtian looked at the black-clad young man with killing intent flashing in his eyes, the gaze the black-clad young man used to look at him was also filled with the same aloof killing intent as though he was about to devour a certain somebody. Apart from killing intent, greed could also be seen in the black-clad young man's gaze. Looks like he has also heard the news about me obtaining the profundity fragment. Duan Lingtian was astute, so he did not miss the greed in the depth of the black-clad young man's eyes. With just a beat of his heart, he faintly came to a conclusion. At the same time, Duan Lingtian extended his spiritual energy and immediately probed the black-clad young man's cultivation base. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed immediately after he discovered the black-clad young man's cultivation base. I didn't expect to come across the three of you again. You three were lucky last time, so I spared your lives. However, this time you can all die together since you're on the same side as Duan Lingtian. The black-clad young man's cold gaze landed on Duan Lingtian for a moment before sweeping across Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang. His tone was cold and aloof. As soon the words left his mouth, the black-clad young man raised his foot. The origin energy on his foot soared up before merging with earth concept and transformed into a gust of vast khaki energy that slammed mightily on the ground. Bam! A loud noise reverberated in the air, it shook the entire cavern as the earth trembled and the mountain swayed. A hideous crack spread out beneath the black-clad young man's feet and continued to spread out in 4 cracks, heading to where Duan Lingtian, Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang were standing. The speed of the cracks spreading was as fast as lightning, it's so fast that it was absolutely terrifying. Horror dawned on Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang at once. At this moment, they could clearly sense that the attack launched by the black-clad young man was more than 50% stronger than the attack that he cast previously. Looks like he held back last time. This thought flashed across the 3 of their minds at the same time. However, right at this moment, 3 cracks that contained blood-curdling energy had crept out and already arrived before them. It left them with no time to resist nor escape. For a time, despair rose up from the bottom of their hearts. Are we going to die now? In a flash, 3 pairs of eyes dimmed down a little. Boom, 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 boom. At the crucial moment, 4 loud bangs exploded and clearly entered their ears and woke them up from their trances. In the next second, they saw with their own eyes that the 3 vile cracks containing horrendous energy that spread out toward them were suppressed by a more powerful force within a foot from them. Apart from the 3 cracks that crept out toward them, the crack that was heading toward Duan Lingtian was suppressed by an even more powerful force. The person who made the move was none other than Duan Lingtian. Nobody noticed when, but Duan Lingtian was already standing high in the air. With his purple robe fluttering in the air, he appeared incredibly elegant with his graceful bearing. Empty-handed, he stood there watching the black-clad young man calmly as though the person who made the move earlier was not him at all. The black-clad young man stood in the air as well. The heaven and earth energy above his head swirled and gathered into 800 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that writhed as they descended, vivid and lively. 3rd level void transformation. Earlier when Duan Lingtian had extended his spiritual energy out, he immediately discovered the cultivation base of the black-clad young man. 3rd level advance earth concept. Presently, he could even read the level of the earth concept the black-clad young man had comprehended when the black-clad young man launched his attack. The strength of 800 ancient horned dragons. And this is before he borrows the earth energy by resonating with the earth using his earth concept. If he borrows the earth energy, he can cast out the strength of 1000 ancient horned dragons even without relying on the spirit weapon. Although Duan Lingtian's gaze remained calm and collected, he could not help but be taken aback in his heart. If the 3rd level advance earth concept was unleashed, it would be equivalent to the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons. If he borrowed the earth energy, he would have an additional 50% strength that was equivalent to the strength of 200 ancient horned dragons. Along with his 4th level void transformation's origin energy TN, Mr. Author might have made a mistake over here. In just a few paragraphs above, it was stated that the black-clad young man's cultivation base was at the 3rd level, but now it turned out to be the 4th level that had the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons. The black-clad young man possessed the strength of 1000 ancient horned dragons without adding in the spirit weapon yet. Oh, the black-clad young man's originally aloof and calm expression changed slightly after Duan Lingtian suppressed his 4 waves of energy. The other party's move was as fast as lightning. Without the need to mobilize his heaven and earth energy to form the heaven and earth phenomenon, he had already suppressed his own energy. It was safe to assume that this person's strength was far greater than the strength of 800 ancient horned dragons that he had demonstrated earlier. Although the other party did not use any spirit weapon like him, he was not afraid at all. This was because he did not borrow the earth energy to make his move. If he had borrowed the earth energy, his earth concept would have an additional strength of 200 ancient horned dragons. He believed at that time, this purple-clad young man before him would no longer be his opponent, and would be stepped beneath his feet. No wonder you could obtain a profundity fragment. Looks like I've underestimated you. When the black-clad young man looked at Duan Lingtian once again, his face had regained its calmness, but there was still some solemnness in the depth of his gaze. He had truly taken Duan Lingtian seriously as his opponent now. Duan Lingtian's strength. When Huang Daniu saw the 800 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that appeared above the black-clad young man's head, his eyes could not help but narrow. However, the moment he returned to his senses, his attention immediately shifted to that purple figure hovering in the air. At this moment, just a purple silhouette was already enough to appear majestic in Huang Daniu's eyes. The strength of 800 ancient horned dragons could actually be suppressed by Duan Lingtian with just a lift of his hand. Moreover, he's not using any spirit weapon at all. All that Huang Daniu could feel was his alarmingly fast heartbeat. For a long period of time, he could not accept this shocking fact at all. Although he did not know much about Duan Lingtian's background, he could feel that the strength Duan Lingtian displayed today was entirely different from the strength that he had demonstrated previously. It was as though the strength was from an entirely different person. It had only been such a short time, and Duan Lingtian's strength was so strong now. Before this, Duan Lingtian did say that he obtained a spirit fruit. Could it be that it was the spirit fruit that helped him with this breakthrough? At the same time, Huang Daniu could not help but speculate on his own. Su Li and Zhang Shouyang's gazes landed on Duan Lingtian in unison as well. Their eyes were shining with a complicated light. Compared to Huang Daniu, both of them knew Duan Lingtian earlier, and they practically watched him grow up day by day. At this moment, the gap between them and Duan Lingtian had become even wider. Such a gap almost made them suffocate. However, although your strength is quite impressive, you'll still have to die today. Not only you, your 3 other friends will have to die as well. As the black-clad young man's gaze turned colder, the khaki energy on his body trembled violently before forging a special connection with the entire cavern. After a moment, the khaki energy on his body sizzled. At the same time, another 200 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared above his head. The moment the scene entered Huang Daniu and the other 2 persons' sights, they were overcome with astonishment. The strength from the earth energy is not a part of the 800 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that he demonstrated earlier. Huang Daniu's eyes narrowed instantly. After he borrows the earth energy, his full strength is equivalent to 1,000 ancient horned dragons. And all this is without the help of his spirit weapon. Once he uses his spirit weapon, I wonder how strong he'll be. Su Li and Zhang Shouyang narrowed their eyes. Their heartbeats increased, and the pace became faster as time went by. They were not able to calm down for a long time. Nobody knew when, but a wry smile had already crept up on the corners of their mouths. No wonder after he saw his strength being suppressed by Duan Lingtian, not only did he not retreat, there's no shock on his face at all. As it turns out, he didn't borrow the earth energy yet. Despair rose up in Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang's hearts. Although the strength Duan Lingtian demonstrated earlier was very strong, they did not think Duan Lingtian could defeat the black-clad young man who was able to demonstrate the strength of 1,000 ancient horned dragons without the help of any spirit weapon. Nobody realized when, but a gigantic hammer had suddenly appeared in the black-clad young man's hand. As soon as the gigantic hammer appeared, it was immediately entangled by the khaki energy as it emanated waves of tyrannical aura. Whoosh! In the next moment, the heaven and earth above the black-clad young man whirled once again and an additional 350 over silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared again very quickly by the side of the 1,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. The black-clad young man had a cultivation base at the 3rd level void transformation. When he unleashed all his origin energy, it was equivalent to the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons. This gigantic hammer gave a boost of 350 ancient horned dragons to the black-clad young man based on the 400 ancient horned dragons. One could easily make out the grade of this weapon. A boost of 88%, that's a grade 1 spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes at once. He could instantly see through the grade of the gigantic hammer in the black-clad young man's hand. It was a grade 1 spirit weapon. The black-clad young man stood there as he held the gigantic hammer. Vast khaki energy emanated out of his body. With the gigantic hammer in his hand as the center, it turned into a vortex. As the vortex expanded, it set off a series of faint explosion sound. When the vast energy spread out to the ground of the cavern, the ground started to crumble and dense cracks spread out like a huge spider web. Apart from that, flurries of hurricanes swept out in all directions with the black-clad young man in the center, and it spread throughout the cavern in just a blink of an eye. It caused the robes on Duan Lingtian and the other 3 to flutter loudly in the wind. Leave first. Duan Lingtian did not turn his head, he ordered unhurriedly as he stared at the black-clad young man calmly. Naturally, this sentence was not aimed at the black-clad young man at all. The moment Huang Daniu and the other 2 heard this, they exchanged glances before heaving a sigh of relief and left the cavern. They stood at the entrance of the cavern as they watched Duan Lingtian and the black-clad young man who was at a stalemate from a distance away. They were aware that not only would they not be able to be of any help to Duan Lingtian in the face of this strong black-clad young man, they might become a burden to him instead. Duan Lingtian hovered in the air. Faced with this black-clad young man who had over 1350 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons above his head, a calm look still remained on his face as he asked indifferently, "You're a disciple of the North Nether sect?" Previously, he had heard from Huang Daniu that this black-clad young man did not even bat an eyelash when he killed the disciples from Anicha sect and Azumo sect. Due to this reason, this person was most likely not a disciple of Anicha sect or Azumo sect. 975 Chapter 976, The Strength of 1,500 Ancient Horned Dragons. With the gigantic hammer in his hand, the black-clad young man was like an unparalleled war god. His eyes gleamed coldly as the black robe on his body fluttered loudly in the wind. His voice was as cold as ice as he spoke unhurriedly, "Dead man, there's no need for you to know my identity." "That's right, why do I need to know the identity of a dead man?" Upon hearing the black-clad young man's words, Duan Lingtian was momentarily stunned before he burst out in a hearty laughter. Duan Lingtian's laughter immediately made Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang stared at each other speechlessly. Duan Lingtian can still laugh out loud at this moment. Could it be that he has faith in himself to defeat that black-clad young man? Su Li muttered in a low voice with his eyes narrowed. That black-clad young man displayed a strength of over 1350 ancient horned dragons with the help of his spirit weapon. If Duan Lingtian can defeat him, then it means that his strength is actually— A gasp escaped from Huang Daniu's throat before he could finish his sentence. Zhang Shouyang stared intensely at the purple figure hovering in the air as he muttered, "I've known Brother Duan Lingtian for a long time now, so I know his conduct pretty well. If he can laugh at this time, it's obvious that he has faith in winning this battle and mowing that black-clad young man down." Upon hearing Zhang Shouyang's words, Huang Daniu and Su Li's hearts that were hoisted high instantly eased. Anticipation could be seen in their eyes as they eagerly waited to watch Duan Lingtian make his move. "Go to hell." Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words and seeing the bright smile on Duan Lingtian's face, the black-clad young man could not contain his temper any longer. He glowered before he disappeared from the spot where he was standing. Whoosh! The gigantic hammer in the black-clad young man's hand tore through with him in tow and charged at Duan Lingtian like an exploding cannonball in an overbearing manner. The airflow in the air began to tremble and set off a thunderous explosion in the places that it passed by. As they exploded, invisible airwaves quivered and compressed the airflow in the air before it set off a vast hurricane that swept out in all directions that resulted in dust covering the entire cavern. Apart from that, a series of ear-piercing wind-whistling sound echoed in the cavern too. The gigantic hammer in the black-clad young man's hand contained a strength of 1350 ancient horned dragons and was like a meteorite that was falling down with the speed of lightning as it slammed down toward Duan Lingtian's head mercilessly. What a powerful force! Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed slightly, and his face darkened a little when he saw the airflow dispersing as the gigantic hammer slammed down. In the face of the gigantic hammer that the black-clad young man wielded, a sword appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand out of thin air. It was a sword that emitted a sharp and jagged aura. A milky white origin energy soared out of Duan Lingtian's body and transformed into a khaki energy that rushed into the sword. Moreover, bolts of purple lightning that were as thick as electric snakes wrapped around the sword as well. Boom, 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 comma. A series of faint explosions erupted in the air. Whoosh, 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 comma. Meanwhile, gusts of speedy blue wind kai appeared and intertwined around the sword as it exuded waves and waves of sharp aura. In just a flash, Duan Lingtian's hands lifted the quasi-royal blade spirit sword above his head, and his entire body exuded an awfully sharp and serrated aura. The energy of the sword in Duan Lingtian's hands spread over his entire body, and it made him look as though he had become one with the sword. The khaki energy entwined with purple lightning and blue wind kai spread out from the surface of his body and the sword in his hand as it enveloped both him and the sword and transformed into a giant sword. Whoosh! As the khaki energy that was intertwined with purple lightning and blue wind kai exploded, the giant sword soared up into the sky and charged toward the gigantic hammer that was slamming down in an overbearing manner like a meteor. When the giant sword soared up into the sky, the sharp and serrated aura filled the entire cavern. Even Huang Daniu and the other two who were standing by the entrance could clearly feel this aura. What a powerful sword concept! Su Li's eyes narrowed instantly. As a sword cultivator, Su Li had a keen sense when it came to the sword concept. His perception of this was far better than that of Huang Daniu and Zhang Shouyang. Swoosh! At this moment, his attention suddenly shifted and landed on the giant sword that was about to clash with the gigantic hammer. He could see that Duan Lingtian was not using any other martial skills at all, and similarly, the black-clad young man was not using any other martial skills as well. It was a direct confrontation between the both of them. They forsook all those complex skills and merely fought with each other using their brute strength, fully demonstrating the enthusiasm and passion of a martial artist. Wham! Like Thor's hammer, the gigantic hammer in the black-clad young man's hand crashed down without warning and continuously dissipated the airflow in the air. Like a humongous stone that dropped into a calm lake, it set off numerous ripples that spread out. The strength of over 1350 ancient horned dragons endowed the gigantic hammer with an enormous power, and it elicited confidence that rose from the bottom of the black-clad young man's heart. Swoosh! The gigantic sword that Duan Ling Tian and the sword transformed into suddenly swept out and intercepted the falling gigantic hammer in the black-clad young man's hand without an ounce of fear. Unlike the 1350 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that were gathered by the heaven and earth energy and mobilized by the black-clad young man and his hammer, from the moment Duan Ling Tian made his move until now, it had only been a few seconds since then, the heaven and earth energy was still whirring above the place he passed by and had not formed the heaven and earth phenomenon yet. What a futile effort! In the face of the giant sword that both Duan Ling Tian and his sword transformed into, the black-clad young man's face was filled with disdain. The khaki energy wrapped around the gigantic hammer slowly expanded and traversed the sky before slamming down on the giant sword. Whoom! Once again, the gigantic hammer flew and dropped down from the sky. It was only a mere foot away from the giant sword. Whoosh! Without any fear, the giant sword intercepted it directly. The expanding sword ray clashed violently with the gigantic hammer and set off a series of ear-deafening noise. Boom, 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 as though it contained an endless amount of power, the sword ray on the giant sword continued to expand and soar when it was in a deadlock with the gigantic hammer in the black-clad young man's hand. The gigantic hammer in the black-clad young man's hand dropped down and a khaki energy swept out. The third-level advanced Earth concept that borrowed the Earth energy swept out without any reservation. However, the black-clad young man turned pale quickly. This was because he noticed the energy on the giant sword that Duan Ling Tian and his sword into continued to rise and strengthen. In just a blink of an eye, it suppressed the energy that was contained in the gigantic hammer. The moment he saw the heaven and earth phenomenon that had finally solidified into form above Duan Ling Tian's head, he was so stunned that horror dawned on his face right away, and he became distracted. When two powerhouses were locked in a battle, the greatest mistake one could make was to be distracted. At this moment, this black-clad young man made the biggest mistake, and it resulted in the energy of the gigantic hammer in his hand coming to a halt for a split second. Swoosh! When the gigantic hammer's energy had a sudden change due to the black-clad young man's loss of attention, the energy that continued to rise from the giant sword swept out like it was crushing dead leaves and slammed down on the gigantic hammer violently as it enveloped the black-clad young man entirely. Wham! A loud noise reverberated in the air. The black-clad young man and his hammer were sent flying backward all at once. Like an arrow that was shot out of a bow, they slammed toward one of the cavern walls by the side and hung on the wall. Naturally, this was because the gigantic hammer in the black-clad young man's hand was embedded in the cavern wall while he hung on the gigantic hammer. Barf! The black-clad young man's vital energy and blood churned. His throat tightened, and he could not stop himself from coughing out a mouthful of blood. To his surprise, after he threw up blood, everything became out of control. Every time he opened his mouth, spurts of vicious-looking blood would stream out from his mouth. In just a blink of an eye, a small stream of blood began to flow on the ground. It was only after a while that he finally regained his senses and stared at the purple-clad figure hovering in the air in the distance with a ghastly pale face, Duan Ling Tian. When the black-clad young man was sent flying away, the giant sword that Duan Ling Tian and his quasi-royal grade spirit sword transformed into had disappeared without a trace. Apart from that, the quasi-royal grade spirit sword had also been put away by him. Duan Ling Tian hovered in the air. The heaven and earth phenomenon gradually dissipated from above his head. The heaven and earth phenomenon that was gradually dissipating had a total of 1,500 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons, over 140 ancient horned dragons more than the black-clad young man's strength. Overpowered. Completely overpowered. And this was the strength Duan Ling Tian had before he communicated with the earth using his earth concept to borrow the earth energy. Otherwise, the number of silhouettes that were slowly dissipating would not be limited to only 1,500 ancient horned dragons but 1,550 ancient horned dragons instead. However, even if it was only 1,500 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons, it was still enough to greatly shock Tuang Danyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang. A strength of 1,500 ancient horned dragons. Huang Danyu's eyes were as wide as saucers. He was completely stunned. Duan Lingtian's strength had completely shaken them. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian strode out, and in just a flash, he arrived before the black-clad young man hanging from the cavern wall with the gigantic hammer in his hand. He calmly stared into his eyes. Colors drained from the black-clad young man's face instantly. A hint of fear was obvious in his eyes. Long before he was sent flying, he had already seen the 1,500 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons solidifying above Duan Lingtian's head. At that moment, he already knew that he was no match for Duan Lingtian. Are you really a disciple from a third-rate force, the Five-Element sect? The muscles on the black-clad young man's face continued to quiver. A hint of disbelief could be heard in his voice. Dead man, there's no need for you to know my identity. Duan Lingtian repeated the words the black-clad young man had uttered to him before, and horror immediately dawned on the black-clad young man's face. The khaki energy on his body rolled out as he struggled to escape. However, when Duan Lingtian was speaking, one of his hand was already accumulating power, and the instant the last word left his mouth, a palm that was filled with thousands of ancient horned dragons' strength charged out and landed on the black-clad young man. Wham! Right away, the khaki energy that was just rising from the black-clad young man instantly shattered as his entire being was smashed into the cavern wall by Duan Lingtian with just one blow. He looked like a wall mural stuck onto the wall. Whoosh! Immediately afterward, Duan Lingtian raised a hand and took off the spatial ring from the black-clad young man's finger. Without any hesitation, he performed a blood ownership claim on the ring. 8th level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment. Duan Lingtian's heart leapt, and he became completely consumed with excitement. 976 Chapter 977, Peng Bao's Plan. After the Azumo sect's disciple who identified the black-clad young man mounted on the wall spoke, the other two Azumo sect's disciples narrowed their eyes. Shocked, one of them took the initiative to ask, "What did you say?" "Leng Ji, did you say he's Leng Ji? Maybe you got the wrong person. How is it possible that Leng Ji is killed?" Leng Ji was easily in the top 6 when compared to the top 3 young men in the second-rate forces from the northern desert. The other person wore an expression of disbelief as well. The Azumo sect's disciple who identified Leng Ji shook his head and said affirmatively, "It's impossible that I got the wrong person, I met Leng Ji once. He might not know me, but I definitely recognize him." When the other Azumo sect's disciple saw that the Azumo sect's disciple was very certain about it, he dismissed his doubts completely even though he was initially skeptical and thought that the other disciple had gotten the wrong person. He could not help but frown as he mumbled, "Among those who entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, perhaps only Senior Brother Mo from our Azumo sect and the other 2 from Anicha sect and North Nether sect have the ability to kill him. The one from North Nether sect? He's from the same sect as Leng Ji, it's impossible that he would kill him. Could it be Senior Brother Mo or the one from Anicha sect who killed Leng Ji?" The Azumo sect's disciple could not help but speculate as he spoke with gleaming eyes. "That's the only possibility. Apart from Senior Brother Mo and the one from Anicha sect, I really can't think of anyone who's capable of killing Leng Ji." The last Azumo sect disciple agreed wholeheartedly. After all, even our senior brother Lei Jun, the second most powerful powerhouse in the current Azumo sect, and Peng Bao, the second most powerful young man in the current Anicha sect, might not be able to defeat Leng Ji, who had comprehended Earth concept in this place since he could get a boost from the Earth energy. "I did not expect Leng Ji, the most powerful person among the current North Nether sect, would die here just like that." The Azumo sect's disciple who recognized Leng Ji could not help but sigh as he spoke about how fragile life could be. Naturally, Duan Lingtian, who was heading toward the Martial Emperor's secret treasure in the central area with Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang, had no idea that 2 scapegoats took the blame for him. Huang Daniu, who was traveling Duan Lingtian, and the other 2 frowned a little and said with concern, "I wonder how's Chen Wei doing?" Chen Wei. When Duan Lingtian heard what Huang Daniu said, he could not help but sigh and muttered, he's dead." "What?" Although Duan Lingtian's voice was soft, Huang Daniu heard what he said. His expression changed dramatically. "Duan Lingtian, is what you said the truth?" "Yes." Duan Lingtian nodded, and he quickly told the story of him discovering Chen Wei's body and burying him. He did not leave out any details at all. "Damn it." Huang Daniu's face turned ashen while his eyes turned red. He could not help but shook his fists in the air. "If I find out who killed Chen Wei, Huang Daniu definitely won't let him go." He was closer to Chen Wei than Duan Lingtian was. Duan Lingtian could not suppress his rage when he saw Chen Wei's body, let alone Huang Daniu who was hot-tempered. It was only natural for him to be so enraged. Duan Lingtian sighed and shook his head. He knew very well in his heart that it was almost impossible to find out who killed Chen Wei. It did not matter if the person was still alive, even if the person was alive, it was impossible for them to find out who killed Chen Wei if the person did not bring it up himself. Duan Lingtian and the other three continued on their journey. They were getting closer and closer to the martial emperor's secret treasure. Brother Lingtian. When Duan Lingtian and the other three entered a spacious cave a couple of days later, they heard a voice that came from the other side of the cave that contained a hint of surprise. Duan Lingtian thought the voice sounded a little familiar when he heard it, but he could not pinpoint where he had heard that voice before. His eyes could not help but lit up when he saw one of the two young men who was approaching from afar as he turned his head around. Peng Bao. The person who called out his name was none other than the Anicha sect's disciple, Peng Bao, that he had met once. Although he only traded once with Peng Bao, the frankness that Peng Bao revealed subconsciously made Duan Lingtian like him genuinely. Very quickly, the smile that appeared on Duan Lingtian's face froze. That was, because at that very moment, he realized that the muscular young man next to Peng Bao was glaring at him menacingly. There was a hint of greed in the depth of the muscular young man's eyes. Duan Lingtian instantly figured out something. He surmised that this muscular young man had also heard the news that was intentionally spread to frame him. It was the news of him obtaining the profundity fragment. Otherwise, that person would not glare at him in such a way considering it was the first time they met each other. Since the muscular young man knew about it, it was only natural that Peng Bao knew about it as well. Duan Lingtian's eyes landed on Peng Bao again. He wanted to see what kind of emotion Peng Bao had when he looked at him. However, he noticed that there was no hostility in Peng Bao's eyes at all. Seems like I'm right about Peng Bao being a good person after all, Duan Lingtian thought with a jolt in his heart. Perhaps Peng Bao heard about him obtaining the profundity fragment, but it did not rouse the greed in him. It could be considered rare. Brother Lingtian, I didn't expect for us to meet here. Who are these three people? Peng Bao greeted Duan Lingtian while he looked at Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang standing next to Duan Lingtian. They're my friends. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly. Peng Bao nodded and smiled at Huang Daniu and the other two in a friendly manner. Huang Daniu and the other two were much relieved since Peng Bao did not show any superiority for being a second-rate force, Anicha sect's disciple. Duan Lingtian looked at the muscular young man next to Peng Bao again. He asked Peng Bao as his eyes gleamed, "This is?" The spiritual energy that he sent out told him that this muscular young man was at the third-level void transformation just like Peng Bao and the black-clad young man that he killed not too long ago. This Anicha sect has so many talents hiding in it. Peng Bao aside, it's a surprise that they have another disciple who is in no way inferior to Peng Bao. Duan Lingtian could not help but exclaim inwardly. However, Duan Lingtian soon found out that he misunderstood the fact. Brother Lingtian, this is Lei Jun from Azumo sect. He's the second most powerful powerhouse in the current Azumo sect. Peng Bao introduced Lei Jun to Duan Lingtian with a smile. Azumo sect disciple. When Duan Lingtian heard Peng Bao's introduction of Lei Jun, he knew that his guess was wrong. This muscular young man was not a disciple from Anicha sect but Azumo sect. Although Duan Lingtian was not interested in getting to know Lei Jun, he had to show respect to Peng Bao since he was introducing Lei Jun to him. He only smiled lightly at Lei Jun courteously and considered that a greeting. However, the smile on his face froze once again. That was because Lei Jun ignored the charming smile on his face completely as though he did not see it at all. Duan Lingtian could not help but feel unhappy about it. Brother Lingtian. At that moment, a clear voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears. He could tell it was Peng Bao performing voice transmission. Duan Lingtian looked at Peng Bao immediately when he heard the voice. He could not help the doubt that appeared on his face since he did not know why Peng Bao used voice transmission. Brother Lingtian, I heard that you've obtained a profundity fragment. Peng Bao's voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears, and his breath was shorter this time. Profundity fragment. Duan Lingtian could not help but frown when he heard what Peng Bao said. The first thought that popped into his mind was Peng Bao believed the news that was meant to frame him, and he wanted the profundity fragment as well. Soon, Duan Lingtian realized that he had misunderstood Peng Bao. Brother Lingtian, don't take it the wrong way. Peng Bao seemed to be able to guess what Duan Lingtian was thinking about when he saw him frowning. He explained through voice transmission immediately, I just want to know which profundity fragment you obtained. I happen to have an 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragment, and our Anicha sect's senior officials can't use it. I'm thinking perhaps we can trade again if the profundity fragment that you have is useful to Anicha sect's senior officials. Peng Bao revealed his plan without pretense. Trade. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed when he heard Peng Bao mention the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragment. Desperation filled the depth of his eyes. His interest sparked as soon as Peng Bao was done speaking. I have a total of 5 profundity fragments in my hand, but I definitely won't trade the 7th level Monarch Stage Earth profundity fragment and the 8th level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment with him. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted. That said, I'm only left with the 3 profundity fragments that I obtained from the Sword Monarch's treasure earlier. The 3 profundity fragments are all 3rd level Monarch Stage profundity fragments. Perhaps I can try trading the 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment with him, as long as he's willing. I want the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragment that he has. At that time, the 3rd level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragments that I have are dispensable, and I'll give them to the sect. Duan Lingtian had a string of thoughts at that moment. When he was pulled back into reality, Duan Lingtian looked at Peng Bao immediately and said via voice transmission, I'm just worried that you won't want to trade with me. The profundity fragment that I obtained is just a 3rd level Monarch Stage profundity fragment. 3rd level Monarch Stage profundity fragment? As expected, Peng Bao could not help but frown when he heard what Duan Lingtian said. The difference between a 3rd level Monarch Stage profundity fragment and an 8th level Monarch Stage profundity fragment was like heaven and earth to a Monarch Stage martial artist. However, for a peak void martial artist who wanted to use the profundity fragment to break through to the Monarch Stage, the difference between the 2 types of profundity fragments was minor. 977 Chapter 978, Peng Bao's Plan. After the Azumo sect's disciple who identified the black-clad young man mounted on the wall spoke, the other 2 Azumo sect's disciples narrowed their eyes. Shocked, one of them took the initiative to ask, what did you say? Leng Ji, did you say he's Leng Ji? Maybe you got the wrong person. How is it possible that Leng Ji is killed? Leng Ji was easily in the top 6 when compared to the top 3 young men in the second-rate forces from the northern desert. The other person wore an expression of disbelief as well. The Azumo sect's disciple who identified Leng Ji shook his head and said affirmatively, it's impossible that I got the wrong person. I met Leng Ji once. He might not know me, but I definitely recognize him. When the other Azumo sect's disciple saw that the Azumo sect's disciple was very certain about it, he dismissed his doubts completely even though he was initially skeptical and thought that the other disciple had gotten the wrong person. He could not help but frown as he mumbled, among those who entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, perhaps only Senior Brother Mo from our Azumo sect and the other 2 from Anicha sect and North Nether sect have the ability to kill him. The one from North Nether sect? He's from the same sect as Leng Ji, it's impossible that he would kill him. Could it be Senior Brother Mo or the one from Anicha sect who killed Leng Ji? The Azumo sect's disciple could not help but speculate as he spoke with gleaming eyes. That's the only possibility. Apart from Senior Brother Mo and the one from Anicha sect, I really can't think of anyone who's capable of killing Leng Ji. The last Azumo sect disciple agreed wholeheartedly. After all, even our Senior Brother Lei Jun, the second most powerful powerhouse in the current Azumo sect, and Peng Bao, the second most powerful young man in the current Anicha sect, might not be able to defeat Leng Ji, who had comprehended Earth concept in this place since he could get a boost from the Earth energy. I did not expect Leng Ji, the most powerful person among the current North Nether sect, would die here just like that. The Azumo sect's disciple who recognized Leng Ji could not help but sigh as he spoke about how fragile life could be. Naturally, Duan Lingtian, who was heading toward the Martial Emperor's secret treasure in the central area with Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang, had no idea that 2 scapegoats took the blame for him. Huang Daniu, who was traveling Duan Lingtian, and the other 2 frowned a little and said with concern, I wonder how's Chen Wei doing? Chen Wei. When Duan Lingtian heard what Huang Daniu said, he could not help but sigh and muttered, he's dead. What? Although Duan Lingtian's voice was soft, Huang Daniu heard what he said. His expression changed dramatically. Duan Lingtian, is what you said the truth? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded, and he quickly told the story of him discovering Chen Wei's body and burying him. He did not leave out any details at all. Damn it. Huang Daniu's face turned ashen while his eyes turned red. He could not help but shook his fists in the air. If I find out who killed Chen Wei, Huang Daniu definitely won't let him go. He was closer to Chen Wei than Duan Lingtian was. Duan Lingtian could not suppress his rage when he saw Chen Wei's body, let alone Huang Daniu who was hot-tempered. It was only natural for him to be so enraged. Duan Lingtian sighed and shook his head. He knew very well in his heart that it was almost impossible to find out who killed Chen Wei. It did not matter if the person was still alive, even if the person was alive, it was impossible for them to find out who killed Chen Wei if the person did not bring it up himself. Duan Lingtian and the other three continued on their journey. They were getting closer and closer to the martial emperor's secret treasure. Brother Lingtian. When Duan Lingtian and the other three entered a spacious cave a couple of days later, they heard a voice that came from the other side of the cave that contained a hint of surprise. Duan Lingtian thought the voice sounded a little familiar when he heard it, but he could not pinpoint where he had heard that voice before. His eyes could not help but lit up when he saw one of the two young men who was approaching from afar as he turned his head around. Peng Bao. The person who called out his name was none other than the Anicha sect's disciple, Peng Bao, that he had met once. Although he only traded once with Peng Bao, the frankness that Peng Bao revealed subconsciously made Duan Lingtian like him genuinely. Very quickly, the smile that appeared on Duan Lingtian's face froze. That was, because at that very moment, he realized that the muscular young man next to Peng Bao was glaring at him menacingly. There was a hint of greed in the depth of the muscular young man's eyes. Duan Lingtian instantly figured out something. He surmised that this muscular young man had also heard the news that was intentionally spread to frame him. It was the news of him obtaining the profundity fragment. Otherwise, that person would not glare at him in such a way considering it was the first time they met each other. Since the muscular young man knew about it, it was only natural that Peng Bao knew about it as well. Duan Lingtian's eyes landed on Peng Bao again. He wanted to see what kind of emotion Peng Bao had when he looked at him. However, he noticed that there was no hostility in Peng Bao's eyes at all. Seems like I'm right about Peng Bao being a good person after all, Duan Lingtian thought with a jolt in his heart. Perhaps Peng Bao heard about him obtaining the profundity fragment, but it did not rouse the greed in him. It could be considered rare. Brother Lingtian, I didn't expect for us to meet here. Who are these three people? Peng Bao greeted Duan Lingtian while he looked at Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang standing next to Duan Lingtian. They're my friends. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly. Peng Bao nodded and smiled at Huang Daniu and the other two in a friendly manner. Huang Daniu and the other two were much relieved since Peng Bao did not show any superiority for being a second-rate force, Anicha sect's disciple. Duan Lingtian looked at the muscular young man next to Peng Bao again. He asked Peng Bao as his eyes gleamed, this is. The spiritual energy that he sent out told him that this muscular young man was at the third-level void transformation just like Peng Bao and the black-clad young man that he killed not too long ago. This Anicha sect has so many talents hiding in it. Peng Bao aside, it's a surprise that they have another disciple who is in no way inferior to Peng Bao. Duan Lingtian could not help but exclaim inwardly. However, Duan Lingtian soon found out that he misunderstood the fact. Brother Lingtian, this is Lei Jun from Azumo sect. He's the second most powerful powerhouse in the current Azumo sect. Peng Bao introduced Lei Jun to Duan Lingtian with a smile. Azumo sect disciple. When Duan Lingtian heard Peng Bao's introduction of Lei Jun, he knew that his guess was wrong. This muscular young man was not a disciple from Anicha sect but Azumo sect. Although Duan Lingtian was not interested in getting to know Lei Jun, he had to show respect to Peng Bao since he was introducing Lei Jun to him. He only smiled lightly at Lei Jun courteously and considered that a greeting. However, the smile on his face froze once again. That was because Lei Jun ignored the charming smile on his face completely as though he did not see it at all. Duan Lingtian could not help but feel unhappy about it. Brother Lingtian. At that moment, a clear voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears. He could tell it was Peng Bao performing voice transmission. Duan Lingtian looked at Peng Bao immediately when he heard the voice. He could not help the doubt that appeared on his face since he did not know why Peng Bao used voice transmission. Brother Lingtian, I heard that you've obtained a profundity fragment. Peng Bao's voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears, and his breath was shorter this time. Profundity fragment. Duan Lingtian could not help but frown when he heard what Peng Bao said. The first thought that popped into his mind was Peng Bao believed the news that was meant to frame him, and he wanted the profundity fragment as well. Soon, Duan Lingtian realized that he had misunderstood Peng Bao. Brother Lingtian, don't take it the wrong way. Peng Bao seemed to be able to guess what Duan Lingtian was thinking about when he saw him frowning. He explained through voice transmission immediately, I just want to know which profundity fragment you obtained. I happen to have an 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragment, and our Anicha sect senior officials can't use it. I'm thinking perhaps we can trade again if the profundity fragment that you have is useful to Anicha sect senior officials. Peng Bao revealed his plan without pretense. Trade. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed when he heard Peng Bao mention the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragment. Desperation filled the depth of his eyes. His interest sparked as soon as Peng Bao was done speaking. I have a total of 5 profundity fragments in my hand, but I definitely won't trade the 7th level Monarch Stage Earth profundity fragment and the 8th level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment with him. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted. That said, I'm only left with the 3 profundity fragments that I obtained from the Sword Monarch's treasure earlier. The 3 profundity fragments are all 3rd level Monarch Stage profundity fragments. Perhaps I can try trading the 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment with him. As long as he's willing, I want the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragment that he has. At that time, the 3rd level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragments that I have are dispensable, and I'll give them to the sect. Duan Lingtian had a string of thoughts at that moment. When he was pulled back into reality, Duan Lingtian looked at Peng Bao immediately and said via voice transmission, I'm just worried that you won't want to trade with me. The profundity fragment that I obtained is just a 3rd level Monarch Stage profundity fragment. 3rd level Monarch Stage profundity fragment. As expected, Peng Bao could not help but frown when he heard what Duan Lingtian said. The difference between a 3rd level Monarch Stage profundity fragment and an 8th level Monarch Stage profundity fragment was like heaven and earth to a Monarch Stage martial artist. However, for a peak void martial artist who wanted to use the profundity fragment to break through to the Monarch Stage, the difference between the 2 types of profundity fragments was minor. 978 Chapter 979, Trade. When Duan Lingtian saw Peng Bao frowning, he could not help but feel as though his heart was being suspended at that moment. Although he was confident he could kill Peng Bao and take the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragment from him, he did not even think of doing that. He thought to himself, he might not be able to defeat Peng Bao if he did not use the amulet when he first met Peng Bao. Moreover, to Peng Bao at that time, he was just an ordinary disciple from a 3rd-rate force and taking the concept fragment from him would be easy. However, Peng Bao did not do that and traded his concept fragment the right way instead. That was why he genuinely liked Peng Bao. Now that the situation had turned around, it was only natural for him to treat Peng Bao the same way instead of robbing him. He made this decision despite acknowledging that he, himself was a scoundrel since he did not have any qualms about snatching treasures away from people he did not know. However, the person he encountered this time was Peng Bao. The Peng Bao who did not rob the concept fragment that he had just because he was a disciple of a 3rd-rate force. Naturally, Peng Bao had no idea what Duan Lingtian was thinking at the moment. If he knew Duan Lingtian's current ability, and his thoughts at the moment, he would definitely feel fortunate that he managed to escape the threat. What kind of profundity fragment do you have with you? Just when Duan Lingtian was hesitating, Peng Bao's voice entered his ears again. It was crystal clear. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. He could tell Peng Bao was interested in the profundity fragment he had. Duan Lingtian looked at Peng Bao and said with voice transmission word by word, it's the wind profundity fragment. Very quickly, he saw the joy that flashed in Peng Bao's eyes. He was excited when he saw that and could not help but exclaim inwardly, here's my chance. It was natural that he was in a difficult situation before joy flashed in Peng Bao's eyes. Speaking of value, the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder profundity fragment that Peng Bao possessed was undoubtedly much higher than the 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind profundity fragment that Duan Lingtian had. However, none of the Anicha sect's senior officials could use the Thunder profundity fragment since none of them had comprehended the 9th level Advanced Thunder concept. Only martial artists who had comprehended the 9th level Advanced Thunder concept could comprehend Thunder profundity from the Thunder profundity fragment to achieve the Monarch stage. Meanwhile, the Anicha sect leader, the second most powerful powerhouse in Anicha sect who was his master as well, could use the Wind profundity fragment. As soon as master obtains the Wind profundity fragment that Duan Lingtian has, he can definitely break through to the Monarch stage instantly and become the second most powerful Monarch stage powerhouse in Anicha sect. Peng Bao's heart thumped with excitement as he thought about this. However, although he was excited, he could not help but think of the grade of the Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment that Duan Lingtian possessed. Out of nowhere, a hint of bitterness appeared at the edges of his lips. Finally, Peng Bao made up his mind. Trade. For the most part, the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment that he had was much more precious than Duan Lingtian's 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment. However, the problem was even if he brought the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment that he possessed back to Anicha sect, it was impossible for Anicha sect to produce a Monarch Stage powerhouse in such a short period of time. It would take ages for anyone in Anicha sect to comprehend the 9th level Advanced Thunder concept and ascend to a 9th level Void Transformation martial artist by comprehending the Thunder Profundity with the help of the Thunder Profundity Fragment. To the current Anicha sect, the 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment's value was much higher than the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment. Peng Bao looked at Duan Lingtian with desperation written in his eyes and asked through voice transmission, "Brother Lingtian, I'll trade the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment that I have with your 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment, are you willing to do that?" Duan Lingtian did not say a word and lifted his hand as quick as lightning. A fragment that shone with green energy was thrown from his hand toward Peng Bao. He used his straightforward action to answer Peng Bao's question. Peng Bao did not expect Duan Lingtian to be so outright and trusted him to the extent where he just tossed the 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment to him just like that. Isn't he afraid I'll leave with the Profundity Fragment? Although Peng Bao thought of that, he, naturally, did not delay his action at all. He took out a fragment that was shining with purple energy and tossed it to Duan Lingtian at the same time he caught the Wind Profundity Fragment. It was the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment that Duan Lingtian wanted. Pa! Duan Lingtian extended his arm like lightning and caught the Thunder Profundity Fragment tightly in his hand. What a steal! At this moment, although Duan Lingtian tried his best to maintain the calm expression on his face, he could not help the excitement that filled his heart. He traded his 3rd level Monarch Stage Profundity Fragment for an 8th level Monarch Stage Profundity Fragment. Many people's jaws would drop if the news spread out. The trade of the Profundity Fragments between Duan Lingtian and Peng Bao was quick like lightning. Even Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang did not see their movements clearly. However, there was another person there apart from the duo, Huang Daniu, and the other two. It was Lei Jun, the second most powerful powerhouse in the current Izumo sect. He saw everything Duan Lingtian and Peng Bao did from the beginning until the end before his eyes. The way he looked at Duan Lingtian was filled with greed, especially when he traded the Profundity Fragment with Peng Bao. If it was not for Peng Bao's sake, he would have taken action. Naturally, Duan Lingtian saw how Lei Jun was looking at him, but he ignored it. His mind was occupied with the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment in his hand. He put the precious treasure that he had just obtained away in his spatial ring as he thought to himself, now the 3 concepts of nature that I comprehended have their relative high-grade Monarch Stage Profundity Fragments. As soon as I comprehend them to the 9th advanced level, I can use the 3 Profundity Fragments to elevate them further to the Monarch Stage Profundity. When Duan Lingtian thought about this, a rush of excitement filled his body. Even if he only had 1 Profundity Fragment that he could use, it meant that he was 1 step closer to achieving Monarch Stage. However, he had now obtained the relative Profundity Fragments for the 4 types of concepts that he comprehended. 7th level Monarch Stage Earth Profundity Fragment, 8th level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment, 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment, and 3rd level Monarch Stage Sword Profundity Fragment. As for the 3rd level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment, I'll give that to the sect. Duan Lingtian planned secretly. Initially, he had planned to give the 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment to the sect after killing the black-clad young man he suspected to be a North Nether sect's disciple and obtained the 8th level Monarch Stage Profundity Fragment from him. Unexpectedly, his meeting with Peng Bao presented him with such a great opportunity. Trading a 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment with Peng Bao's 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment was such a steal. Naturally, it was impossible for him to give the 3rd level Monarch Stage Wind Profundity Fragment to the sect since it was with Peng Bao now. Therefore, he could only give another Profundity Fragment that he possessed. Coincidentally, since he obtained the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment from Peng Bao, the other 3rd level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment that he possessed became dispensable. He could give that to the sect. There are a total of 5 profundity fragments in the outer ring of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Now that I have 3 of them, who could have obtained the other 2? Duan Lingtian could not help but wonder as his eyes gleamed. Brother Lingtian, I supposed you are all heading to the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Suddenly, a voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears. After he was pulled back to reality, he turned toward the source of the voice and saw Peng Bao smiling as he looked at him. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. If that's the case, let's go there together. We're going there as well, Peng Bao suggested. Sure, Duan Lingtian agreed instantly. However, Lei Jun, who was standing at the side, looked extremely unpleasant after hearing what Peng Bao said. The reason Peng Bao did this was naturally to protect Duan Lingtian, so Lei Jun would not be interested in robbing the profundity fragment from Duan Lingtian. Peng Bao, since you have gotten what you need, then there's no need for us to work together anymore. A menacing gleam flashed in Lei Jun's eyes as he looked at Peng Bao. The glare soon shifted to Duan Lingtian. The killing intent was rising. It was as though he could not wait to kill Duan Lingtian to have a peace of mind. Whoosh! Lei Jun dashed out as soon as he was done speaking. He was headed in the direction of the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. He disappeared before Duan Lingtian and the others' eyes in an instant. Peng Bao did not care much about Lei Jun's departure, and Duan Lingtian naturally did not care at all. After asking Hua Daniu and the other 2 to come along, they headed toward the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure together. The objective of their journey was to search and fight the other young powerhouses for treasures when they arrived at the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. If they managed to live, each of them would have to exit from the cave that they entered. Whoosh, 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 the 5 of them were quick, and they were getting closer and closer to the central area. Peng Bao, since you're an Anicha sect's disciple, you must know something about the disciples from North Nether sect. Duan Lingtian asked Peng Bao curiously while they were on the way. North Nether sect's disciples, I know a few of them who are rather remarkable. Peng Bao said, why did you ask that out of nowhere? Do you have friends from North Nether sect? No, Duan Lingtian shook his head and casually said, I'm just asking, is there a young powerhouse who comprehends the 3rd level advanced Earth concept and achieved 3rd level void transformation in North Nether sect? Are you talking about Leng Ji? Peng Bao could not help but be stunned as soon as Duan Lingtian was done speaking. 979 Chapter 980, Lei Jun. Leng Ji. Duan Lingtian raised his brows. The silhouette of the black-clad young man he killed not too long ago appeared in his head. Seems like he's really a disciple from the North Nether sect. Yes, Peng Bao nodded. Among the young men in the current North Nether sect, a disciple who comprehended the 3rd level advanced Earth concept as well as being a martial artist at the 3rd level void transformation, Leng Ji is the only one who achieved all that. There was fear in Peng Bao's tone when he said, Leng Ji is the 2nd most powerful powerhouse in the current North Nether sect. His ability is extraordinary. We're on equal standing if we're to fight in a high altitude, but if I encounter him in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, I'm nothing compared to him. Duan Lingtian nodded. Naturally, he knew the reason why Peng Bao said that. The Martial Emperor's secret treasure was made of hidden caves deep underground. Each and every corner allowed martial artists who had comprehended Earth concept to connect and get a boost from the Earth energy as much as they wanted. So that fellow was called Leng Ji. At that moment, Huang Daniu nodded at the side in realization. After a while, he could not help but sneer. So what if he's the 2nd most powerful powerhouse in the current North Nether sect? Duan Lingtian killed him just like that. There was pride on Huang Daniu's face the more he spoke, as though it was him who killed Leng Ji instead of Duan Lingtian. What Huang Daniu said did not receive any reactions from Duan Lingtian, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang. However, Peng Bao was stunned. It was as though he was struck by lightning when he heard what Huang Daniu said. He immediately stopped moving. When Duan Lingtian and the others saw Peng Bao had stopped, they followed suit. Brother Lingtian, you killed Leng Ji. Peng Bao looked at Duan Lingtian. His eyes were wide open as shock and disbelief filled his tone. Although he could faintly guess Duan Lingtian had an extraordinary ability when he found out that he had obtained the profundity fragment, Duan Lingtian was much more powerful than he had imagined. However, he did not expect Duan Lingtian to possess the ability to kill Leng Ji. Leng Ji had the same cultivation base as he did, while the concepts that he had comprehended were similar to him as well. However, he would definitely be defeated if he fought Leng Ji in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Lang Ji had comprehended Earth concept, and he could use Earth energy in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure as much as he wanted. That meant he was able to boost his Earth concept by half. Duan Lingtian only nodded lightly in response to Peng Bao's questioning. His face was relaxed as though killing Lang Ji was nothing worth mentioning to him. Naturally, it was indeed nothing worth mentioning in reality. If he chose to attack first, and the energy in his body was unrestrained, he could display the strength of ancient horned dragons that was 200 times more powerful than Lang Ji. One blow was all he needed to kill Lang Ji. When he saw Duan Lingtian's casual nod in response to his question, the edges of Peng Bao's lips twitched, and the first thing that popped into his mind was, monster. Such a terrifying disciple had appeared in the third-rate force, the Five-Element sect. A hint of shock rose from the bottom of his heart. The purple-clad young man before him was only 25 years of age at most. Even if he managed to slow down aging with his high cultivation base and took good care of his body, his real age definitely would not exceed 30. Peng Bao was certain of that. That was the reason why he found it shocking and even unbelievable. Let's go. Peng Bao continued on their journey together to the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure with Duan Lingtian and the others after Duan Lingtian called out to him. However, he would occasionally look at Duan Lingtian along the way. This young man could be considered as the ultimate freak for being able to kill Lang Ji, who could utilize the Earth energy. How powerful is his ability exactly? Luckily I didn't think of robbing the 9th level saber concept from him back then, otherwise, I'll be the one who's dead instead of him. Peng Bao's heart could not help but beat faster when he recalled the scene when he first traded with Duan Lingtian when they first met. He remembered the trade clearly until today. He traded his 9th level Earth concept fragment with Duan Lingtian's 9th level saber concept fragment. At that time, to him, Duan Lingtian was just a naive boy from a third-rate force whose ability was weak and not worth mentioning. His face was a little flushed when he recalled advising Duan Lingtuan before they parted ways. This time as well, luckily, I wasn't greedy for Brother Lingtian's third-level Monarch stage profundity fragment. Fighting for the profundity fragment for the sect aside, I might not even come out alive. Peng Bao was hit with a wave of anxiety when he thought about this. It's silly that I was afraid Lei Jun would attack Brother Lingtian for the profundity fragment, that Lei Jun's ability is on par with me, but he's nothing compared to Lang Ji in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Peng Bao mocked himself for underestimating Duan Lingtian earlier. Brother Lingtian even managed to kill Lang Ji. If Lei Jun dares to offend Brother Lingtian, he'll undoubtedly die. Naturally, Duan Lingtian had no idea what Peng Bao was thinking about. His mind was currently occupied with getting to the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. That place was an unknown existence to him. The unknown was also the most terrifying since nobody knew what could happen in there. According to the Martial Emperor's message, there's a palace in the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. It's the place where he ended his life. Duan Lingtian recalled the information in the message the Martial Emperor left after they entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. It's definitely going to be a difficult task to obtain the 3 profundity fragments in his body from the palace. Duan Lingtian had a strong gut feeling about that. Naturally, he had such an instinct due to the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories that he had merged with. According to the Rebirth Martial Emperor's thoughts that he retrieved from the memory, if a Martial Emperor really did leave behind the place that he died in an Emperor stage profundity, he definitely would not let anyone reach it easily. To a Martial Emperor, only the most outstanding person was worthy of his Emperor stage profundity. 3 days later, Duan Lingtian stopped moving, the 4 people following him stopped as well, and they stood next to him. When they stopped, they realized that there was no way ahead of them. They were currently in a spacious cave. There were 3 paths each on both sides of the cave connected to the other cave. They looked lost, they had no idea which path really led to the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Should we split up? Huang Daniu took the initiative and suggested. I guess that's the only way to do it. Duan Lingtian nodded, and his eyes landed on the entrance of the cave that was further on the left side. I'll go there. Duan Lingtian then looked at the cave entrance that was further on the right side and said to Peng Bao will go there. Peng Bao nodded, he did not have any opinion on that. Daniu, Su Li, and Big Brother Zhang, 3 of you will stick together and investigate the other cave entrance. No matter what we find, we'll meet here again after a day. Duan Lingtian looked at Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyang. Their abilities were the weakest among the 5 of them. For their own safety, Duan Lingtian had them work together. Sure, Huang Daniu and the other two responded immediately. Duan Ling nodded at the four of them and turned into a bolt of purple lighting immediately. He then dashed into the cave entrance that was further on the left of the cave in an attempt to explore the situation there. Peng Bao was the next one who dashed away and entered the cave entrance that was further on the right side. Meanwhile, Huang Daniu and the other two entered the other cave entrance. As the three of them moved, a silhouette appeared at the cave entrance outside. It was the silhouette of a muscular person. Peng Bao, let's see how you're going to protect that Duan Lingtian this time. The muscular silhouette belonged to Lei Jun. Ever since he parted ways with Duan Lingtian and the other four the other day, he had been heading toward the central area of the martial emperor's secret treasure on his own and arrived here. Since he had gotten here with the help of 1,000 ancient horned dragons' strength, he found the correct path leading to the central area in an instant. The correct path was behind the cave entrance on the further right of the cave. It was the one Peng Bao was checking out. After determining the correct path to the central area of the martial emperor's secret treasure, an idea popped into his head when he was going to continue on his journey. He realized that this place was the only opportunity for him to kill Duan Lingtian and obtain the profundity fragment from him. 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment. An avaricious glow flashed in Lei Jun's eyes. As he sprinted, his body was filled with purple lightning that surrounded him. He sprinted and disappeared into the cave entrance that was on the further left in the cave. His target was none other than Duan Lingtian. To be exact, the 8th level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment in Duan Lingtian's hands. Naturally, Duan Lingtian had no idea Lei Jun was hiding in there, neither did he know Lei Jun was on his way to him. Whoosh! Origin energy ran rampant in Duan Lingtian's body as he dashed into the cave entrance on the left side of the cave. The four concepts followed him like shadows, and it also complemented his body that looked like it transformed into a gigantic sword that was covered in khaki energy, purple lightning, and green energy. Whoosh! The gigantic sword dashed from one cave to another in an attempt to find the path to the central area of the martial emperor's secret treasure. Time passed by silently, and soon, half a day had gone by. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had investigated the situation on his side thoroughly. It was an unsolvable maze, and there was no other way to proceed apart from turning back. I'll head back first, perhaps they'll have some clues on their side, Duan Lingtian thought to himself and began to turn back. Just when he was nearing the cave entrance that he entered from earlier, Duan Lingtian, who was sprinting, suddenly halted his movement. A cold gleam filled his eyes as he stared at the muscular young man not far away. Lei Jun.